Time. Something inherently invisible, now revealing its true form. It needs no knives nor bullets. It just silently passes by and strips everything away. An object thrown into the rift vanishes. A person pulled back out. Ages 30 years in the blink of an eye. When steel rusts, flesh withers, and memories erode like dust. Qin finally realized what stood before him. It wasn't just a dangerous zone, but time itself bearing its fangs. And if it's time, the price to pay is never cheap. Qin opened the window, glanced over the control panel, and casually grabbed the level 10 binoculars he had just crafted. He stepped up to the window, locked onto the target, and hurled them with all his might. Bullseye. The moment the binoculars touched the rift, they vanished without a trace. Bring me a mechanical eye. I don't have one. Xiao AI's voice echoed through the train car. This area is completely shielded. When Biaozi was scouting outside, I couldn't even connect to the mechanical eye on him. Biaozi just caught a group of people, right? Throw them in and test it. Let's see. Soon after, Zhang Yi, piloting the Pope mech, stood on the roof of the train. In his hand, he dangled a fiercely struggling survivor whose face was twisted in sheer terror. After tying the man securely with a steel cable, Zhang Yi slowly began to spin the cable in his hand. Like a brute swinging a lasso, he spun it until it whistled through the air, then suddenly let out a roar. The tied-up survivor instantly turned into a shooting star, hurtling straight toward the time rift and vanishing the moment he touched it. Luckily, the steel cable was still there. Qin stood in the train car, watching the scene unfold. His eyes suddenly lit up. He grabbed the walkie-talkie, his voice urgent. Pull him back. The very next moment, a man suddenly appeared in midair right in front of them. He had actually been pulled back out of the time rift. This actually works? Qin was utterly astonished. He hadn't expected the time rift to swallow artillery shells whole, yet failed to consume a steel cable. Could it be because the cable hadn't fully entered it? Bring him here. Let me see. The train car door opened. Qin frowned at the white-haired old man standing before him. His teeth were mostly gone, and his eyes were completely vacant. His skin was as wrinkled as an old shoe insole, looking like a crumpled diary, devoid of words, yet packed with information. Is this the guy from just now? Yeah. Zhang Yi also looked a bit bewildered at the old man he was supporting. It's him. It's just, he aged way too much. Boss Mang, look at this. Lao Zhu stepped forward, holding a section of the steel cable. This end is still brand new, but the other end is severely aged and rusted, like it's weathered 30 years of storms. Qin stayed silent for a moment, then looked at the senile old man in front of him. Give him 2 shots of adrenaline. Ask him what happened inside. Biaozi nodded. After the injection, the old man seemed to experience a brief terminal lucidity. His complexion improved slightly, but his gaze remained unfocused, his pupils unable to dilate properly. Take him down to the medical bay and treat him first. I want him to open his mouth and tell me exactly what he saw in there. Yes, sir. Biaozi quickly supported the old man and led him away. Boss Mang. Lao Zhu's voice turned serious. Based on the current situation, the flow of time inside the rift is likely vastly different from the outside. Only a few seconds passed for us, but inside, it might have been nearly 30 years. Qin shook his head. Then what did he eat during those 30 years? Did he not need food or water? Lao Zhu was momentarily stumped. Qin didn't say anything else, just staring at the specs of a module on the control screen. Level 50 Internal Spatial Stabilizer Supermodel Effect. When the train enters a time rift, crew members will not suffer negative effects from the flow of time. He finally understood what this module was made for. Just then, Xiao AI's voice chimed in. Treatment cost requires 39.2 million units of iron ore. Tell him to wait for death. Qin remained expressionless. Nearly 40 million units of iron ore? Back then, curing Shan Miao's wife of ALS only cost a few $100,000. This is more like paying an advance fee for his next reincarnation. He knew this price wasn't just pulled out of thin air. It proved that eliminating the effects of the time rift came at an astronomical cost. Thinking of this, he became even more intrigued by the rift. I definitely have to go in and take a look. Of course, he wasn't foolish enough to go in himself. His train was larger than the rift itself. Who knew how the system would judge it? Would it only let half the train in, or would something else happen? Just the fact that he didn't fully understand the rift's nature meant he couldn't take the risk. However, the internal spatial stabilizer was a module that could be crafted as soon as a train reached level 3. Just because he wasn't going in didn't mean someone else couldn't. He could totally find a brave soul, use a train token to craft a level 1 train for them, and send them in to scout. Lao Zhu, find me a volunteer. Understood. Not long after, a burly man stepped forward, stood at attention, and spoke loudly. Good afternoon, Boss Mang. Resident number 1998 reporting for duty. Awaiting your orders, Boss Mang. You again? Chen Mang was a bit surprised. Were you the volunteer the last 2 times as well? The first time cracking the password lock was me. The second time moving the robot was my twin brother. This time, it's me again. You sign up this eagerly every time? I'm tough to kill. How tough? The burly man pulled up his shirt, revealing a torso covered in scars. I've been injured countless times since I was a kid. Never died once. Nonsense. Chen Mang rolled his eyes. Who could stand here talking if they were dead? Chen Mang didn't say anything else. He just took out a train token, tossed it to the man, and lowered his voice. This mission is extremely dangerous. I will do my absolute best to ensure your safety, but the mortality rate is still very high. If you make it back alive, you'll receive level 3 high-tier talent benefits from now on. Lao Zhu, get him a level 4 energy stone. Right now, the train had less than 1,000,000 units of iron ore left. Crafting another level 4 energy stone would cost 500,000 units, practically emptying their pockets. The man's train didn't need upgrading. A level 1 train was enough. Even upgrading it to level 3 would be useless without the infinite upgrade perk. How many Murphy stones would it take to craft a level 50 internal spatial stabilizer? But Chen Mang had another way. There were detachable modules, and there were non-detachable ones. The internal spatial stabilizer was detachable. He directly unequipped it and installed it on the man's train. As for the rest, it was up to fate. Whether he lived or died, no one could say for sure. A few minutes later, a tiny locomotive was hoisted onto the shoulder of the Pope mech piloted by Zhang Yi. With a roar, he hurled it with all his might straight toward the time rift in the sky. Trailing behind the locomotive was a long steel cable. That's right. This level 1 train couldn't even fly. It still used the most basic wheels. Bluntly put, it was just an empty shell. Chen Mang watched the man sitting in the train car, screaming to hype himself up, and couldn't help but feel a bit conflicted. In terms of sheer guts, this guy was way braver than him. In this lifetime, he would never dare to drive a level 1 train into a time rift himself. Inside was completely unknown, and the chance of death was extremely high. Just sleeping overnight in an empty train car like that was enough to make anyone uneasy. Lao Zhu. Speak, Boss Mang. Lao Zhu stood respectfully by his side, bowing slightly. If this man makes it back alive, reward him with a refrigerator. Yes, sir. Right after, Zhang Yi, standing on the train roof, suddenly yanked the steel cable hard. The level 1 locomotive was instantly pulled back out. Chen Mang's eyes were glued to that locomotive. When he saw that the man inside hadn't aged at all, he finally let out a laugh. Biaozi and the others in the train car couldn't hold back their excited cheers. It worked. The man came back alive, and he didn't age a bit. Hurry up and invite him over. Ask him what happened inside. Chen Mang looked at the burly man standing before him with satisfaction. Not bad. Do you feel any discomfort anywhere in your body? Nope. The man scratched the back of his neck. He hesitated for a moment before continuing. I just felt like I was sitting in the train, getting tossed into a really weird tunnel. Before I could even get a good look, I was pulled right back out. How about I go in a few more times? If it's that easy, I won't feel right taking these level 3 high-tier talent benefits. Tell me more about that tunnel. The man thought for a moment, then answered seriously. That tunnel is huge. So huge it completely defies logic. All around, there were countless streams of light flowing forward, like a space-time tunnel. The dizziness was intense. Other than that, I didn't get a chance to look closely. Very good. Chen Mang nodded in satisfaction. You're going in one more time. This time, stay inside for exactly 3 minutes before coming out. Take a mechanical eye with you, and bring Li Shiji along. Lao Zhu, go to Neon City and call Li Shiji out here. The mechanical eye might not work in there. We need his human eyes. Also, pick another one of those survivors who ambushed us earlier. Tie him to the front of the train so he's completely exposed outside. See if his body undergoes any changes. Record everything. Are you absolutely sure you don't feel any discomfort right now? Absolutely sure. Shin Meng nodded, turning to look at the time rift not far away. He felt he had a rough idea of what this thing was. If the time dilation could be exploited, he couldn't help but wonder. Could he just toss a solar panel straight in there without needing the internal spatial stabilizer? Absorbing 30 years' worth of energy in the blink of an eye. A beautiful dream. Who knows if it could actually be done? Everything was quickly prepared. Today's mission, explore the time rift. However, before that, a small experiment was needed to pinpoint the exact flow of time. Was it 3 seconds outside equals 30 years inside? Or was it a fixed 30 years inside regardless of how much time passed outside? If it was the latter, then staying inside for even a minute was absolutely out of the question. Because by then, who knows how many years would have passed? The steel cable would definitely turn to dust, and that train would be forever lost in the time rift. Soon, everything was ready. Zhang Yi piloted the mech, holding the steel cable with a heavy object tied to the other end. With a powerful heave, he threw the cable into the time rift 10 meters away. This time, he waited exactly 1 minute before pulling the cable back out. Shin Meng stood in the control room, looking at the steel cable Zhang Yi had just brought up. Comparing it to the previous cable, there was almost no difference. This meant that while only 1 minute passed outside, 30 years had passed inside the time rift. Thinking of this, he frowned. Is this for real? Shin Meng still couldn't fully wrap his head around the mechanics of the time rift, but at least this proved his initial judgment was correct. Li Shiji and the others could absolutely stay in the space-time tunnel for less than a minute without any danger. He quickly gave the order, telling the volunteer and Li Shiji to get ready to move out. Xiao AI, send one of your physical bodies in there to check the situation too. Understood. A minute later, accompanied by the sound of the retracting steel cable, a level 1 locomotive was violently yanked out of the time rift. The rift was almost invisible to the naked eye. The whole scene looked like a locomotive suddenly popping out of thin air, giving off an extreme sci-fi vibe. As soon as the train was pulled back, Xiao AI, standing in the car, immediately reported, "Boss Meng, my body didn't bring back any data. The data logs are completely empty. There are no traces of deletion. It's as if nothing was ever recorded in the first place." Not long after, Li Shiji pushed open the control room door, walked up to the second floor, and headed straight for the control console. His voice was hoarse and solemn, yet carried a hint of disbelief. "Boss Meng, that time tunnel, just like the volunteer said, it possesses a grandeur far beyond imagination. At a rough estimate, its width must be at least hundreds of millions of miles. Humanity has almost no concrete concept of such a number, but when you look at it, it feels like it's right in front of your eyes. There are no accurate reference points. It's completely impossible to judge the true scale of the tunnel. You can only intuitively feel that it is unfathomably vast. On both sides of the tunnel are bands of light flowing forward. The weirdest part is, their flow speed is very slow, like a river." Li Shiji glanced around and casually picked up a flashlight from the table. He shined it on the floor and continued, "Look, when I turn on the flashlight, the beam instantly hits the ground. You can't see its trajectory at all. That is the speed of light. But inside that tunnel, it's different. We could clearly see the beams of light acting like streams of water, slowly flowing forward. In the entire tunnel, aside from our train, there wasn't a single other object. Behind the train was just half a steel cable. There was absolutely no sign of a portal or anything similar." At this point, Li Shiji quickly sketched on the screen with his finger as he spoke, then stopped. "Boss Meng, that's roughly the situation inside." Shin Meng narrowed his eyes at the image of the time tunnel on the screen. To be honest, he really wanted to go see that magnificent sight for himself, but the Stellaris was too big. It simply couldn't fit into this rift. "I threw a pair of binoculars in there earlier. Did you see them?" "Didn't see them." Li Shiji shook his head. Even though a level 1 train can't fly, inside the tunnel, the train was suspended in midair. We could feel a very faint pushing force. If it weren't for the steel cable pulling us back, we probably would have been pushed straight to the very end of the space-time tunnel. The end of that tunnel could be another world, or it could just pop you straight out into outer space. Chen Mang fell silent. He really wanted to know what exactly lay at the end of the time tunnel, but this was clearly too risky. The solar panel was a non-detachable module, so it couldn't be sent in either. Actually, there was still one way to scout it, but the price wasn't small: the Goblin train ticket. In theory, no matter where you were, this ticket could teleport you back to the train. It was vastly superior to human train tickets, almost entirely unaffected by distance or shielding. So far, there had never been a case where a Goblin train ticket failed to work. But the 100+ goblins on the train were basically zombies. They had no independent thought and couldn't communicate. The only ones capable of thinking and talking were Mengda and Daba. These two goblins were extremely important to the Stellaris, especially Mengda. He even planned to reform the guy, so he'd stop stealing and seriously hand out free admission tickets to Neon City like flyers. Thinking of this, even Chen Mang found it a bit amusing. And Daba absolutely couldn't afford to have anything happen to him. The entire goblin race only understood Daba's words. If he died, there would be no way to communicate with the rest of the goblins. Moreover, once inside the time tunnel, whether the goblin train ticket would still work was an unknown. Goblins could resurrect if they died, but God knows where they'd respawn. It was even less clear if reaching the end of the time tunnel would count as dying. If he didn't die but got imprisoned instead, the consequences would be unpredictable. Forget it. Chen Mang shook his head, decisively giving up on the idea. We'll hold off on exploring the time rift for now. Once the train's level is higher, there will definitely be safer methods. Just then, the control room door was suddenly pushed open. Daba walked in, leading Mengda. His expression was grave, his voice low. "Boss Mang, I know you're exploring the time rift. I think our goblin race can help." Chen Mang frowned slightly. He hadn't told anyone about the idea of using the goblin train ticket. It had only just crossed his mind. Yet Daba actually knew? "Boss Mang, you don't know this. There are many races in the universe, and quite a few possess exclusive racial talents. Our goblin race's talent is immunity to distorted time magnetic fields. In other words, we can bypass the time rift. Let me go. If anything goes wrong, even if I die and respawn in another zone, I'll find a way to contact the Stellaris and come home." My memories haven't recovered much, but the moment I saw the time rift, I suddenly remembered a few things. Hearing the resolve in Daba's voice, Chen Mang paused for a beat, then turned to Xiao AI. Check the surveillance footage of Car 11 during those 30 minutes. He wanted to confirm if, during that half hour when space was frozen, the goblins had been immobilized or not. "I can't view it, Captain. Didn't you permanently delete the surveillance footage from that time period yourself?" "I forgot." Chen Mang didn't press the issue further, instead looking at Daba. "You don't need to go just yet. Send another tribesman first. Tell him to crush the goblin train ticket in his hand exactly 1 second after seeing the time tunnel. Let's test if the goblin train ticket actually works inside the time tunnel." "Understood." On the train roof, Zhang Yi, piloting the Pope mech, swung the steel cable again, hurling a green-skinned goblin into the rift. After pausing for 1 second, he yanked the cable hard. The end of the line was empty. The goblin had vanished. But right after, that goblin reappeared on the train. "Excellent." In the control room, upon receiving the report, Chen Mang said "excellent" twice in a row, anticipation clear in his eyes. The goblin train ticket works. That means Daba really has a shot at making the trip. Mechanical eyes were useless. The moment they entered, they only picked up static, bringing back 0 images or data. It could only be said that the goblin train ticket was vastly superior to human train tickets. If it were a normal train ticket, there'd be absolutely no way to return in this situation. Since that's the case, Daba, you give it a try? If you happen to die and respawn in another zone, I'll put out a bounty and do everything in my power to find you across all zones. "Understood, Boss Mang." Daba replied seriously. A great goblin never fears unknown risks. If everyone feared the unknown, this civilization would be forever stuck in place. There always needs to be a group of pioneers to step up and shoulder the responsibility. Daba pulled a piece of white cloth from his chest, tied it around his pointy ears, and strode out of the control room. The naked goblin that had just been thrown into the space-time tunnel earlier truly showed no signs of aging. Goblins were born with the ability to ignore the effects of time rifts. This was their racial talent. Why doesn't humanity have this kind of racial talent? Chen Meng muttered to himself, then turned to Li Shiji. The second time your train went in, what happened to the old man tied outside? Turn to ash. Li Shiji replied curtly. The moment we entered, he instantly turned into dry bones, then crumbled into dust and dissipated right there in the tunnel. Daba didn't pilot any train, nor did he bring any weapons. His entire body was wrapped in spatial pouches, each containing a goblin train ticket. He even had one clenched in his mouth. In an emergency, even if severely injured, he could still bite down on the ticket to return. Brother, you're even braver than me. Zhang Yi's voice blared from the Pope Mech's external speakers. Whether you make it back alive or not, I, Zhang Yi, respect you. Last time, Senmei told me you were incredibly arrogant, always calling yourself the greatest goblin. At the time, I thought Senmei was just talking nonsense. But now it's true. You truly are a very great goblin. I won't eat goblins anymore. Daba, standing in the palm of the mech and taking deep breaths to calm himself, froze when he heard this. He turned to look at Zhang Yi in disbelief and screamed, Holy shit! You used to eat goblins? Of course not. Zhang Yi grinned, pulling his right arm back slightly into a throwing stance. Just a little joke to help you relieve some stress. Ready? You're about to launch. The next moment, Daba was hurled straight out, hurtling toward the time rift before vanishing in midair. Who the hell eats green meat anyway? Zhang Yi sat in the mech's cockpit, stuffing a meat sandwich into his mouth while mumbling incoherently. This Daba guy, he's really brave. Inside the time rift, the scene before Daba's eyes almost instantly shifted from the desolate city ruins to a space-time tunnel formed by countless flowing streams of light. Feeling the void-like suction ahead, a trace of fear gradually appeared in his eyes. An intense sense of loneliness and helplessness quickly enveloped his entire body. Looking back, the Stellaris was no longer there. It felt like being tossed into the middle of a dark ocean, only able to cling to a piece of driftwood to barely survive. The feeling of impending death made his breathing grow rapid. He wasn't as brave as he appeared. Goblins could indeed ignore the effects of distorted time magnetic fields. Rumor had it that after the apocalypse descended, the goblin race had to undergo many experiments before discovering this talent. But before this, he had never actively used it. He was just an ordinary goblin. But now, things were different. Now he was the king. And as a king, he had to have the courage of a king. There are only kings who die fighting, no kings who fear death. Perhaps the title Goblin King had given Daba true courage. His breathing gradually steadied, and he began to observe his surroundings. Without any reference points, he couldn't judge how fast he was going. He only felt a slight tightness in his chest, while his speed seemed to blend seamlessly with the flowing streams of light around him. There was no sound. Absolutely none. It was terrifyingly silent. He could even clearly hear the blood rushing through his veins. His heartbeat echoed in his chest like thunder, yet he didn't feel a lack of oxygen at all. Just like that, he drifted, and kept drifting, silently floating through the space-time tunnel. From initial fear, to gradual calm, and finally, to bewilderment. He didn't know how long he had been drifting. It just felt like a very long time. A month? 2 months? Or even longer. Daba looked down at the goblin train ticket in his spatial pouch. Memories of the Stellaris flashed through his mind, and a sudden, overwhelming urge to go home surged within him. He wanted to go home. But his mission wasn't finished yet. He still hadn't seen the end of the space-time tunnel. Perhaps even more time had passed than he thought. In his mind, Boss Mang's face gradually blurred, leaving only one single moment deeply etched. In the apocalyptic abyss, Boss Mang had decisively told him that he would become the king of the goblin race, and that he would help him rebuild goblin civilization. He had believed it. He had always believed it up until now, never doubting it for a second. Goblins don't know how to lie, except for black market merchants. He felt a bit of regret. He should have stopped by the resident store to buy a game console before leaving. Maybe it could have helped kill some of this endlessly long and boring time. He opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but realized he hadn't spoken in so long that he seemed to have forgotten how. Time here seemed much, much longer than imagined. When he returned, would the Stellaris already be a level 20 or even level 30 train? Without him, would his people still listen to Boss Mang? Right at that moment, the streams of light that had been flowing steadily around the space-time tunnel suddenly became chaotic, wildly turbulent. Before he could react, Daba saw a massive time rift appear at the end of the tunnel. His body was pulled away by an irresistible suction force. The scenery abruptly changed. Daba's body plummeted from the sky, slamming hard into the ground. This was the first time in a very long while that he felt the solid sensation of his feet touching the ground. A sharp pain shot through his body, forcing his nearly stagnant brain to start working again. Be Boss Mang. Boss Mang. Daba, the Great Goblin. Daba stood there, his pronunciation still a bit stiff. After gradually recovering his long-unused ability to speak, he hurriedly observed his surroundings. All around were city ruins. The place he was standing in looked like a junkyard. This entire ruin was situated inside a colossal cavern. Above his head wasn't a blue sky, but layers of earth and rock. The scenery looked somewhat like the abandoned machine city in the Earth Core Nuke Encounter map back in the Zombie Basin, but on a much smaller scale. He moved his body, took a goblin train ticket out of his spatial pouch, gripped it tightly in his hand, and began to explore. This junkyard had no household trash. It was entirely made up of metal scrap. Just as he was about to head deeper, he suddenly heard footsteps echoing nearby. Daba's expression shifted slightly. He immediately rolled and hid inside a nearby pile of trash, burying himself. Through a gap, he saw a middle-aged man leading 3 or 4 burly guys into the junkyard, cursing as they walked. What kind of garbage encounter map is this? There aren't even any quests, and I don't see any rewards either. It even said it allowed 1 train to enter and that the map would self-destruct after 24 hours. I thought there'd be some good loot. We've searched the entire ruined city and found nothing. The only place left is this junkyard, but what could possibly be here? Only 3 minutes left. Just do a quick sweep. Consider this trip a bust. Get ready to head back. The middle-aged man grumbled a few more times in frustration, pulled out a cigarette, lit it, and sat down on a rock nearby, blowing smoke. But the very next moment, he looked down at his feet. Binoculars? He picked up the old-looking binoculars. Before he could say anything, his eyes flashed with astonishment. Level 10 binoculars. Are they crazy? What kind of idiot uses 8 Murphy stones to upgrade a pair of binoculars? Is their brain full of water? He cursed with his mouth, but his hands carefully and painfully wiped the dirt off the lenses with his clothes. 8 Murphy stones, just thinking about it hurts. The man tested the binoculars for a moment, then grinned from ear to ear. Not bad. At least we didn't come up completely empty-handed. You guys look a bit closer. Only 2 minutes left. Hurry up. There might be other good stuff here. Damn it. If I'd known, we would have just come straight to the junkyard. Why the hell did we even bother with the ruined city? 2 minutes passed very quickly. Having found nothing else, the middle-aged man spat a thick wad of phlegm. Not daring to delay, he immediately led the burly men back the way they came. After confirming it was quiet outside, Daba finally crawled out of his hiding spot, brushed the trash off himself, and scanned his surroundings. Without any hesitation, he shoved everything he could see, as long as it fit, into his spatial pouches. He didn't know what these things were used for, but bringing them back to Boss Mang might be valuable. Goblins scavenge trash, but they scavenge with strategy. 5 minutes later, Daba suddenly heard a crisp shattering sound ring in his ears. Instinctively, he looked up, only to see that a crack had appeared above the city at some unknown point. But it wasn't a crack in the cavern ceiling. It looked more like a spatial rift. The crack rapidly spread at a visible rate, covering the entire sky above the city like a giant spiderweb. Boom! A fragment fell, revealing a deep, pitch-black abyss. Inside the abyss, faint starlight flickered. Daba's expression shifted slightly. He knew this was the map collapsing, just like that middle-aged man had mentioned. Not daring to hesitate, after shoving the last item in his hand into his spatial pouch, he immediately crushed the goblin train ticket. However, there was no reaction. Oh no! A flash of despair appeared in his eyes. He couldn't return to the Stellaris anymore. He might have to spend an incredibly long time before he could find the Stellaris again. But right then, he suddenly thought of something and immediately turned to look behind him. Looking closely, in an area behind him, space was slightly distorted, as if being scorched by an invisible flame. That was the time rift he had come out of. By now, the cracks had spread throughout the cavern, even reaching the junkyard. The entire encounter map could completely collapse at any moment. With no time to overthink, Daba let out a roar, bursting with all the strength in his body, and sprinted straight toward that time rift. The next moment, Daba vanished from the spot. At the same time, the cracks engulfed the entire cavern. The whole city, including the junkyard, was like a detonator button had been pressed. The massive black hole instantly swallowed everything, leaving not a single trace behind. Even the time rift gradually shrank in the process of being consumed. Daba had returned to the space-time tunnel. Watching the tunnel around him shrinking at an extreme speed, a faint glimmer of hope appeared in his eyes. He pulled out another goblin train ticket and crushed it with trembling hands. A flash of white light erupted. The scenery before his eyes instantly changed. Daba had reappeared in the control room of the Stellaris. Boss Mang was standing right in front of him. People like Biaozi were also standing nearby, looking over. Daba froze for a moment, countless emotions surging in his heart. His legs gave out, and he collapsed to his knees, suddenly bursting into loud sobs. Boss Mang, I thought I'd never be able to come back. I almost forgot what you looked like, Boss Mang. In the control room of the Stellaris, Chen Mang watched Daba chugging water like a madman. He patted him gently on the back. Drink slowly. Don't rush. Once you're done, tell us what happened. After downing 2 bottles of mineral water in a row, Daba let out a burp. Thinking about how so many people had just seen him cry, he was filled with regret and embarrassment. He muttered softly, I don't know why. It's been months, but I didn't feel hungry at all. Just a little thirsty. Boss Mang, everyone. Have you all been waiting for me here this whole time? Shin Mang pondered for a moment, then pointed to the time displayed on the control screen. Daba, from the moment you entered the time rift until you returned to the train car, a total of exactly 3 minutes and 27 seconds passed. 3 minutes? It's probably due to the difference in the flow of time, Xiao AI chimed in from the side. Very quickly, Daba recounted everything he had experienced. After listening, Chen Mang remained silent. He leaned back in his chair, his knuckles tapping a steady rhythm on the desk. The end of the time rift is actually an encounter map. There was even another train captain who entered it. In that case, the time rift could be understood as an entrance to a specific encounter map. It's just that this isn't an official entrance. It's more like smuggling yourself across the border. A long while later, Chen Meng shook his head, stood up, and smiled at everyone. The answer to the time rift has been found. It might not be the final answer, but at least we have a preliminary one. Now, let's give a round of applause to the pioneers of this expedition. It's thanks to them that the Stellaris can continue to grow. Inside the train car, the applause of Biaozi and the others immediately rang out. Daba originally wanted to say something else, but when he heard the applause, saw the approving look in Boss Mang's eyes, and felt everyone's admiration. He paused slightly. His body instinctively stood up straight, and the corners of his mouth uncontrollably curled up to his ears. Just doing my duty. Just doing my duty. Lao Zhu, make sure to record Daba's actions, as well as that other man's. People who dare to be pioneers like this need to be commended more. Understood. The batch of goods Daba brought back didn't contain any modules. It was all just scrap metal, looking like it had been dismantled from some abandoned equipment. Xiao AI had already taken them to the Mech Research Center for study. And right at this moment, the time rift in front of the Stellaris was slowly shrinking at a visible rate, until it completely disappeared. The next moment, ding, 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 a familiar sound echoed through the train car. The enemy detection radar had resumed normal operation, displaying all the people hiding in the city ruins. As expected, the reason this city suffered from severe signal interference was due to the existence of the time rift. Chen Meng looked at the over 10,000 survivors displayed on the radar screen and frowned. He hadn't expected so many people to still be hiding in this city. The doors of escort car 7 immediately opened. Biaozi led his squad, rushing out one after another to start gathering supplies. This gathering run was much simpler. Under Xiao AI's guidance, it felt no different from turning on a full map wall hack. Chen Meng had no intention of taking the survivors hiding in this city with him. These people had likely been hiding since the apocalypse began. If he forced them to come along now, their resistance would definitely be very strong, and he was too lazy to deal with all that psychological baggage. The Stellaris currently had enough people. If new residents were to join in the future, they should only be slaves from other trains. Only when there's a comparison will they truly realize how good the treatment on the Stellaris is in this apocalypse, allowing them to integrate faster. 3 hours later, the Stellaris set off on its return journey. Its speed surged to 5,040 kilometers per hour, hitting its maximum, and it began charging straight into the stone golem zone, sweeping through area by area. The enemy detection radar remained continuously active to search for that smirking guy's train. Chen Meng hadn't forgotten that scammer. Although this zone was vast, with the Stellaris' current speed, finding a single train wouldn't take too much effort. Sweeping them one by one, he'd find it sooner or later. Level 4 iron or mine. Level 4 copper or mine. The resource exploration radar occasionally scanned a few unmined or partially mined level 4 deposits. In the purple zone, level 4 ores appeared quite frequently. They weren't hard to find. A basic level 4 mine was equivalent to 10 million units of iron ore. Only in a zone of this level could defensive modules be upgraded. But it seemed it still wasn't enough. After all, anyone wanting to maintain a large number of train cars or upgrade modules to higher levels would see their resource consumption calculated in the hundreds of millions. The train didn't stop. It just marked the mine locations and continued hunting for the smirking guy's train. About 2.5 hours later, the target finally appeared. On the enemy detection radar screen, the smirking guy's train was stopped in the wilderness, seemingly resting. The Stellaris slowly decelerated and approached. Chen Meng had no intention of ramming straight into it this time. Even though at its current speed, the drill could absolutely crush that train, his external modules couldn't withstand such a brutal collision. Iron ore was down to just a few 100,000. Using copper ore was better. At least they still had nearly 20 million units of that. Very quickly, the module specs of that train appeared on the control screen. Level 14 mechanical train. Highest defensive module, level 11 star ring energy shield. Strongest defensive module, level 14 comet main cannon. Additionally possesses red quality module, space-time jump. Activates once per day. Upon activation, opens a teleportation portal, allowing movement to any location within the zone. Comprehensive threat assessment. When the distance was only a few thousand meters, the Stellaris suddenly stopped without any warning. 9 doomsday mech cannons simultaneously locked onto the target. Amidst a ferocious roar, countless artillery shells traced brilliant arcs through the evening sky, blanketing the smirking guy's train. Right after, a notification popped up on the control panel. Incoming fire detected. Estimated impact in 1 second. Attack intensity, level 14. Suggested response, ignore it. The next moment, a crimson beam several meters wide shot straight out of the smirking guy's train, slamming hard into the Stellaris' outer armor. Alarms blared continuously. Train speaker integrity decreased by 12%. High-power magnet decreased by 22%. Headlights decreased by 9%. The mechanical tentacles were also affected. Conversely, all of the Stellaris' artillery shells missed their target, smashing into the ground and kicking up waves of fiery dust. The smirking guy's train had vanished. Completely vanished, leaving no trace behind. Unbelievable. Chen Meng looked at the flashing numbers on the screen, feeling both shocked and helpless. This was the first time he had failed in a head-on clash. What amazed him the most was that red-quality comet main cannon. That kind of attack was just too badass. A crimson beam 5 or 6 meters wide. If used to fight a boss, it would guarantee a one-shot kill right through the heart. Compared to the Doomsday Mech Cannon, this thing was way more practical in actual boss fights. The sheer power wasn't even on the same level. He had never upgraded this module, mainly because he didn't have enough iron ore. But now, he was starting to feel tempted. It's just, damn it, is there any way to protect these external modules? Every time a fight broke out, the first things to get damaged were always the high-power magnet and that damn speaker. Aside from the energy shield, is there really no other solution? Repair. Shin-Mang looked at the text on the screen, stating it required 168,000 units of iron ore for a full repair. He cursed under his breath in annoyance, then continued piloting the Stellaris, speeding across the plains in pursuit of the fleeing train. Space-time jump? What kind of red quality module is this? Where did he even get it? It's definitely good stuff. I wonder if it's detachable. The level 1 train he had used to scout the time rift had already been swallowed up by him. The internal spatial stabilizer had also been reinstalled on the Stellaris. Inside the smirking guy's train, the gloomy-faced old man stared at the flashing information on his control screen, cursing inwardly. Level 16 artillery shells. That guy's doomsday mech cannon is actually level 16. And he doesn't just have one, he has a whole barrage of them. Anyone who runs into that and doesn't flee is a complete idiot. No grudges, no bad blood. Why the hell did he suddenly attack without a word? Thank God he had space-time jump, otherwise he would have died right there on the spot. Could it be because of the bounty? This thought made him feel a bit incredulous. When he left Neon City, he did indeed see the casino post a bounty on him, but he hadn't cared at all. His only worry had been whether Neon City would process his chip exchange normally. But the exchange process went incredibly smoothly, without any unexpected hiccups. As for that bounty, in his eyes, it was nothing but a joke. He was a level 14 mechanical train. They wanted to put a hit on him for a mere 2 million stellar tickets? Who would mess with a level 14 train for 2 million units of iron ore? Did they even calculate the cost of a single battle? Just the resources consumed in one battle by a level 14 train far exceeded that amount. A losing business deal. No one would want to do it. Yet that train had launched an attack directly, without any warning. Did that guy actually take the bounty? Is he insane? Just that volley of shells he fired must be worth millions of units of copper ore. An hour later, Shin-Mang sat in the Stellaris and chuckled. He had spotted the smirking guy's train on the enemy detection radar again. Run. The zone is only so big. Where else can you run? You dare play dirty tricks and act like you have some special item? The doomsday mech cannons locked onto the target once again. Nearly 1,000 artillery shells tore through the sky again, blanketing that train like a ferocious metal storm. Space-time jump can only be used once a day. This time, there's nowhere left to run. The next moment, countless explosions erupted. The front of the train was almost instantly blown to pieces. The cars behind it coasted forward on momentum for a bit before slowly coming to a halt. The Stellaris leisurely stopped at a safe distance. Escort Car 7 opened. Biaozi's squad expertly jumped out and began clearing the battlefield. This was what they were best at. Squad 1 deployed in a fan formation, approaching Car 2. Squad 3 was in charge of guarding the rear cars. Squad 2 provided fire support. Biaozi piloted the Thunder Mech, slowly advancing toward the burning train, his eyes full of vigilance. This was an expanded train. The interior of the cars was up to 7 meters high. Very quickly, Squad 1 approached the severed section of Car 2. The locomotive was long gone. Those piloting mechs took the lead, while members wielding tsunami Gatling guns provided cover from behind. Just as they reached the severed section, before they could even observe the situation inside Car 2, Biaozi saw 3 heavy machine guns on the roof of the car aiming straight at them, their barrels starting to spin at high speed. His expression changed drastically. He roared, Plan 6. Without hesitation, he stomped hard and leaped into the air. The massive halberd in his hands smashed straight down onto the 3 heavy machine guns that were roaring and unleashing a hail of bullets from the roof. Integrated Fire Control System. Xiaoai, the train captain isn't dead. Biaozi's voice echoed loudly inside the mech's cockpit. Once a train captain dies, all of the train's modules lose their effect and become scrap metal. The fire control system is still active. There's only one possibility. The train captain is still alive. Those machine guns were using level 3 ammo. Biaozi's mech could easily withstand it, but the Squad 1 members behind him didn't have that kind of protection. He immediately turned his head to check. Seeing that his squad members had managed to hide inside the refrigerators according to their drill plan with no casualties, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. Xiaoai's voice quickly rang in his ear. Car 3 is a disguised locomotive. Retreat immediately. Understood. At the same time, the Doomsday mech cannon on the roof of that train also turned its barrel, firing madly at the Stellaris' escorts. But thanks to Xiao AI's timely warning, everyone had already hidden inside the refrigerators. No one was hurt. Within the range of the enemy detection radar, these refrigerators had defensive capabilities equivalent to train armor. Small-caliber Doomsday mech cannons couldn't pierce them at all. The Stellaris' Doomsday mech cannons immediately switched targets, laying down suppressive fire on Car 3. The next moment, an earth-shattering explosion echoed across the wilderness. The Smirking Guy's 6-car train had chosen to self-destruct. A massive fireball shot straight into the sky. Countless shards of scrap metal blasted outward in all directions, simultaneously shredding over a dozen zombies that had run over to see the commotion. Several refrigerators and mechs were blown away by the blast, flying into the air like kites with broken strings. Chen Meng stood in his train car, silently watching the giant fireball and the billowing pillar of black smoke. Under the force of this explosion, the speaker he had just repaired dropped to 78% integrity again. This was the most powerful train self-destruction he had ever seen. The higher the level, the more terrifying the self-destruct power. This time was a total bust. The slaves on that train were pretty much all dead. In that situation, there couldn't be any survivors. As for resources, needless to say, they were all blown to dust. But these things were secondary. The most important thing was that Biaozi was severely injured, and the train didn't have enough iron ore left for his treatment. Xiao AI, contact Lao Zhu. Tell him to head back to Neon City and withdraw 1,000,000 units of iron ore. Understood. After that, Chen Meng, with an incredibly ugly expression, walked toward Car 2. By now, all the escorts had crushed their train tickets and returned to escort Car 7. Everyone anxiously and hurriedly carried Biaozi, running straight to the medical bay in Car 2. Even though doing this would mess up the accounting a bit, you can't let a living person die just because you're short on cash. Very quickly, Chen Meng saw Biaozi. His entire body was impaled with steel shards, and both his legs were completely gone, leaving only his upper half. Blood continuously poured from his mouth. He tried to speak, his voice weak. Boss. All right, stop talking. Chen Meng waved his hand, his face grim. Hurry up and get him into the medical bay. Lao Zhu has already gone to Neon City to get iron ore. Just wait a bit and give him a few more shots of adrenaline. He glanced at the treatment cost displayed. 357,000 units of iron ore. Not expensive. It's just that the train currently didn't have it. Biaozi looked absolutely miserable, but under the effects of adrenaline, he wouldn't die immediately. As long as Lao Zhu brought the iron ore back, fully healing him wouldn't be a problem. Boss. Biaozi was clearly very anxious, trying to prop himself up to sit in the medical bay, only to realize his arms completely refused to listen to him. He could only continue to open his mouth, trembling. Boss Meng. Don't worry. With me here, you won't die. Boss. Stop talking. The more you talk, the faster you die. Fridge. Refrigerator. Just then, Lao Zhu rushed in carrying a refrigerator, his face full of anxiety. He panted. Boss Meng, I'm back. I was afraid it wouldn't be enough, so I brought back a full 2,000,000 units of iron ore. The next moment, the medical bay lid closed. A massive amount of nutrient solution flooded in, covering Biaozi's entire body. 3 minutes later, the medical bay opened again. Biaozi stood up, a few scraps of cloth still clinging to his body. He stretched his body a bit, then jumped out of the medical bay, solemnly taking a knee on the floor. Thank you for saving my life, Boss Meng. But, Boss Meng, next time, could you let me finish my sentence? I wanted to say there was no need for Lao Zhu to go back. I found the iron or storage crate in Car 2, and at the very last second, I shoved it into a refrigerator. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been injured this badly. That refrigerator got blown away. I wanted you to send someone to find it, Boss Meng, before someone else picked it up. Was I the one stopping you from talking? Chen Meng shot him a glare. Your throat was full of blood, bubbling like crazy. I was afraid you'd choke to death. Xiao AI invited you to the hive mind, and you didn't even join. I don't think I received it. Squad 3 Captain. Here. Go retrieve everything that got blown away. The Squad 3 Captain hesitated slightly, as if wanting to say something, but ultimately swallowed his words. He replied seriously, understood, and quickly left. At the moment a train self-destructs, it's very hard for anyone inside the cars to react in time. But after confirming the train captain wasn't dead, Biaozi had been on maximum alert, directly shoving his train ticket into his mouth. Initially, upon receiving Xiao Ai's order to retreat, he had prepared to leave. But right at that moment, he saw a storage crate and, almost on instinct, shoved it into a refrigerator. Immediately after, the train self-destructed. The massive explosion almost instantly melted his thunder mech into scrap. Fortunately, it still blocked the fatal blow for a split second, giving him just enough time to bite down on the train ticket in his mouth. Even so, because he was too close, both his legs were blown off. As for the escorts outside the train, they had all hidden in the refrigerators. No one was hurt, except for Zhang Yi and Zhang Er. Those two were chewing on steamed buns at the time and couldn't bite their train tickets immediately. But because they were wearing level 12 mechs, the mechs only suffered 27% damage. They themselves weren't severely injured. Some bandages and stitches were enough. Very quickly, all the blown-away refrigerators and the two Pope mechs were brought back. Additionally, a twisted pile of scrap metal, barely a meter tall, was found in the rubble. In car 2, Biaozi stared at the blackened lump in front of him, asking in disbelief, "Are you sure this is my thunder mech? My mech wasn't this short. Xiao Ai, can this still be repaired?" Xiao Ai stood nearby, the word idiot displayed on her screen. She stood still, saying nothing. "Xiao Ai, why are you always insulting people? You tell me, do you think this thing can still be repaired? Come on, tell me your repair plan. If it can't be repaired, then fine. Why so fierce?" Biaozi shrank his neck back, his voice weakening. Then he turned to Chen Mang, asking somewhat hesitantly, "Boss Mang, how much iron or did my injuries cost?" 357,000 units. Biaozi paused, instinctively saying, "Is that so? Then how much is in the crate I brought back? Did we break even?" "A lot." Chen Mang pointed to the medical bay next to them. "We pulled 106 pieces of shrapnel out of your body. Gather one more, and you can use the 107 brothers to trade for a government job. Didn't it hurt? Surviving that, you really are tough to kill. If your overall constitution had been even slightly weaker, you'd have died long ago. Lao Zhu, here, collect all this shrapnel, along with that ruined mech. Set up an exhibition stand in Resident Car 8. Later, ask Xiao Ai for 2 photos of Biaozi's injuries, front and back. Frame them and make a wall of honor." "Understood, Boss Mang. I know what to do." Biaozi stared blankly at the scene before him, unable to react for a moment. It seemed like he was about to become famous. He was ecstatic inside, but he tried to keep a straight face, doing his best to suppress his emotions. After handling everything, Chen Mang finally patted Biaozi on the shoulder and smiled. "We definitely broke even. That crate had a full 17 million units of iron ore. A massive contribution. Well done. But the Stellaris will earn countless 17 million units of iron ore in the future. If you die, the Stellaris will never have a second Biaozi. Compared to 17 million units of iron ore, you are far more important to the Stellaris. From now on, try not to take reckless risks for merit. Prioritize keeping yourself alive. Understand?" "Understood." Biaozi grinned, clearly unable to hide the excitement in his heart. Sure enough, still a bit too eager. After clearing the battlefield, the Stellaris slowly left the area. Along with that self-destructed train, everything had turned to scrap. Nothing was left. According to the casino's intel, that guy had used 20 million stellar tickets to exchange for chips, and when he left, he took 8 million units of iron ore with him. There should have been more on the train, at least another 14 million units or so, but it all turned to ash in the explosion. Even so, 17 million units of iron ore was enough. Note that this 17 million wasn't 17 million pieces of regular ore, but entirely high-level ore. It was just calculated to that number when converted. In the train car, Chen Mang, having just repaired the speaker, spoke up. "Tell Lao Zhu to return the 2 million units of iron ore he brought back. Then call Mengda and Daba here. I have an important task for them." "Understood." Biaozi was so happy today that his steps felt light as air. The corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up to his ears. This was the first time Boss Mang had officially praised him and acknowledged his value. Honestly, a man spends his whole life chasing only one thing: recognition. Especially when he saw Resident Car 8. The scrap mech was placed on an exhibition stand, along with nearly 100 pieces of steel shrapnel extracted from his body. Biaozi couldn't help but nod slightly in satisfaction, pretending not to hear the astonished whispers of the residents around him. He coughed lightly, then turned to look at Lao Zhu beside him. I guess I'll have to wait until I'm dead to become a black and white photo. I guess I'll have to wait until I'm dead to become a black and white photo. Lao Zhu muttered. It's not like I even get the chance to get injured. My contributions aren't as visibly obvious as yours. It's as if the more miserably you get hurt, the greater your merit. Hey, Lao Zhu, I smell jealousy. You really have changed. Calling me Lao Zhu straight to my face now. You used to call me Captain Zhu. Are you jealous? Lao Zhu paused for a moment, then shook his head. A little, but you need to be careful. Playing like this, sooner or later, you'll get yourself killed. Biaozi just chuckled and didn't reply, standing there looking at the two photos hanging on the wall. I didn't feel it at the time, but looking at it now, it does look a bit miserable. My back and chest are covered in steel shards. It looks so gruesome. I'm practically a hedgehog. Hey, Captain Zhu, why is the photo cropped below my waist? A big piece like that should be hung up for me to show off. Don't be an idiot. Lao Zhu turned around expressionlessly and walked toward car 7. I'm too lazy to talk to you. Biaozi didn't mind, just muttering to himself with a wide grin. Try not to take reckless risks for merit. Boss Mang said, try not to take reckless risks for merit, which means it's still allowed. If the train wants to develop quickly, someone has to dance on the edge of a knife. What is a civil official like, you know? Lao Zhu was genuinely unhappy today, feeling a bit stifled inside. He sat alone in his room in car 7. As the vice captain, the second in command on the train, he was in charge of all matters, big and small, regarding daily life and management. Under his watch, the nearly 10,000 residents had never caused a major incident. All the trivial matters were also handled perfectly. But his contributions were very hard to display visually. Unlike Biaozi, 17 million units of iron ore was a clear achievement. The wounds on his body were clear medals. And his? Lao Zhu's mind was in turmoil as he scribbled aimlessly on a piece of paper with a pen. The thought even flashed through his mind. Should he ask Boss Mang to let him join the escort squad? Just then, the door to his room was suddenly pushed open. Who is it? Lao Zhu instinctively looked up. When he saw that the person walking in was Boss Mang, he immediately stood up and said respectfully, Boss Mang. Sit down. Shin Mang, carrying 2 bottles of liquor and with 2 cigarettes in his mouth, sat down at the table. He placed a handful of sunflower seeds on it, then pulled out one of the cigarettes and handed it to Lao Zhu, smiling. Feeling a bit unbalanced inside. And no, I'm not. Lao Zhu's ears immediately turned red. He avoided eye contact and replied stubbornly, I'm just recording this event into the train's development history. Shin Mang chuckled, not exposing him. He just took out a lighter, lit his cigarette, and offered the flame. Do you remember the first time we met? Lao Zhu hurriedly stood up, leaned over to cup the flame, then sat back down, speaking slowly. Of course I remember. Back then, we were still in Master Kuen's slave cabin. Actually, the moment you boarded the train, I noticed you. You were clearly much cleaner than the others. You didn't look like someone from after the apocalypse, but more like someone from before it. After entering the cabin, you claimed that straw mat. 3 days later, you decisively killed the guy who provoked you with a single strike. I knew right then that you were no ordinary person. In the slave cabin at that time, everyone was despairing and resigned to their fate. Only you. It was like a fire was burning inside you, scorching and blinding. Shin Mang listened silently to Lao Zhu's story, just smiling without saying a word. After he finished, Shin Mang finally spoke softly. Lao Zhu, you were the first person to follow me, right? That's right. I've seen all your hard work over this period of time. Whether in terms of merit or seniority, you are second to none. It's just that everyone has a different role. Just keep following me. You have nothing to worry about. In the dimly lit private room, Shin Mang didn't say anything more about the matter. He just shifted the conversation to the things Lao Zhu had experienced before the apocalypse hit. About 30 minutes later, Shin Mang stood up, patted Lao Zhu lightly on the shoulder, waved his hand, and walked out of the private room. Lao Zhu stood there, silently watching Boss Mang's retreating back, the corners of his eyes slightly red. Having done ideological work for others so many times, he naturally understood that Boss Mang had come here today specifically to do ideological work on him. He just hadn't expected that the moment a tiny ripple of emotion surfaced within him, Boss Mang would immediately notice it and even make a personal trip just for him. Honestly, he understood all the principles Boss Mang had spoken of. It was just a difference in roles. But humans are emotional creatures. Even if you understand many principles, when it happens to you, it's hard to avoid being swayed by emotions. It's just that now, those emotions had dissipated. Boss Mang wasn't wrong. Whether in seniority or merit, he wasn't lacking. So what was the point of overthinking? Some words don't need to be said often, they just need to be said at the right time. In the train's control room, Chen Mang sat down in his chair, watching the lines of data scrolling rapidly across the screen, and let out a soft sigh. A train being too big isn't necessarily a good thing. Just walking back and forth is a hassle. Xiao AI's voice echoed in the control room. Captain, you've always told me to keep an eye on Lao Zhu. Is it because you were worried he'd grow resentful? No. Chen Mang shook his head. Generally speaking, someone who constantly flatters their superiors is very prone to bullying their subordinates. Lao Zhu's behavior is a habit formed from his work experience before the apocalypse. Normally, this type of person would use the suppression of subordinates to regain the feeling of being flattered by others. It's a kind of psychological self-compensation mechanism. Do you know who makes up the majority of women who seek out male escorts? Prostitutes. Not exactly. The majority are women who work in nightclubs and commercial karaoke bars. Every day, they have to force smiles to serve others, accumulating a lot of frustration inside. So they seek out others to serve them as a way to compensate for their emotions. Just like the maids who served eunuchs in ancient times, they were usually the most miserable ones. In essence, it's all just people finding ways to rebalance themselves. But since the Stellaris started developing, Lao Zhu has almost never bullied his subordinates. In other words, his flattery towards me isn't out of fear of authority. If it were out of fear of authority, standing in a high position, he would be incredibly arrogant towards those below him. Lao Zhu's flattery is because he genuinely feels that I am strong enough. What he's flattering isn't authority, but me as a person. Only in this scenario will you not see someone kissing up to their superiors while stepping on their subordinates. Xiao AI's voice from the speaker paused for a moment before she spoke slowly. Captain, it seems you just used a lot of different ways to praise yourself. This is called being a good judge of character. Chen Mang shook his head. This is also the trait I value most in Lao Zhu. Having worked in a power system for so long, yet when the apocalypse hit, he was able to immediately break free from the mindset of power structures. If he had placed himself in the position of the second-in-command and started enjoying the power, he wouldn't have made it this far. This is the apocalypse, not peacetime. You can't just sit back for the rest of your life as long as you don't make any major mistakes. I didn't kill him, but he won't live long anyway. Resentment will build up at the bottom, and the train will eventually be divided. But he positioned himself as my steward. When I first met him in Kal's slave cabin, he looked like he had been a slave for a long time. He didn't look like a former vice captain at all. He's very smart. He always knows how to put himself in the most suitable position at the most appropriate time. And he absolutely never crosses the line. On this entire train, no one is more suited to be the vice captain than him. Xiao AI asked hesitantly. If old Zhu is that capable, why did you still have to personally go and give him a pep talk? He's human, not a god. Chen Mang shook his head, ending the topic. And as a human, he's bound to have emotions. Back to the main point. What was up with that train just now? Did it have 2 locomotives? A 3D hologram of the Xiao Liezue appeared on the screen. Besides locomotive number 1, cabin number 3 is also a locomotive, just disguised as a regular cabin. This type of locomotive doesn't provide much power, but it allows the captain to quickly retreat to cabin 3 if the main locomotive is destroyed, so they can continue controlling the train. They know how to play the game. Chen Mang nodded. This was the most troublesome train he had encountered so far, but it wasn't impossible to deal with. It would just take a bit more effort to destroy. His gaze shifted to the other crew members on the train. Mengda had already set off. Who knows which zone he was in right now? He had given Mingda 5,000 free admission tickets to Neon City to distribute, and even got him a new set of clothes. From now on, Mingda wouldn't be running scams anymore. He had officially washed his hands of that life. In the apocalypse, being able to turn over a new leaf was already a kind of blessing. Once Mingda left the train, he would immediately lose contact. They could only wait and see how his progress went. Half an hour later, the Hongxing slowly came to a halt in front of a level 4 iron mine. This was a mine Chen Mang had marked along the way. As soon as the train stopped, a group of residents grabbed their pickaxes and rushed down, quickly preparing to start mining. Meanwhile, the armed robot Yi-Dong and the security team simultaneously deployed to secure the perimeter. Tell Brother Biao that the security team needs to be expanded. Increase each squad to 30 people. I'm heading into Neon City to check the situation. Understood. Inside Neon City, it was currently approaching the second dusk. Today was the city's trial run. It would temporarily close at night, and the next opening wouldn't be until next Monday. Standing before the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Sun City building, Xiao AI quickly reported. As of now, the total number of train captains entering Neon City is 188. The peak concurrent number of captains staying is 101. Save the data compilation for after midnight. Chen Mang interrupted. How is the batch of goods I brought in a few hours ago performing? They're doing quite well, Xiao AI nodded. Among the daily consumer goods, toilet paper is the best seller. The best-selling tools are level 4 pickaxes, level 4 axes, and off-road motorcycles. Toilet paper? Chen Mang was slightly surprised, but quickly understood. It seemed that most other train captains had to face a very practical problem. How to wipe. And level 4 pickaxes selling well made perfect sense. After all, not everyone had Murphy stones to smash into a pickaxe production line. If you wanted to mine high-level ores, buying high-level tools was the fastest way. Were there any incidents? None. Good. Chen Mang nodded, quite satisfied. For the next few days, he just had to wait and see what Mingda's harvest would be. If the results were good, when Neon City reopened next Monday, there would likely be a real explosion in traffic. The custom clothing service is also selling very well, Xiao AI continued reporting. Many captains placed bulk orders. A total of over 8,000 custom outfits, priced at 100 units of iron ore each. The type with thermal insulation, without spatial pockets. That's 800,000 units of iron ore, Chen Mang nodded. Very good. Currently, Neon City's currency exchange rate was 1 unit of iron or copper ore for 1 Hongxing ticket. But Hongxing tickets could only be exchanged back for iron ore, not copper ore. Up to this point, no one had used copper ore to exchange for tickets. For most trains, this stuff was a lifesaver. No one was foolish enough to spend it casually. As for wood, he didn't accept it. Aside from making clothes and some basic items, this resource didn't have much practical value. After observing for a while longer, Chen Mang returned to the train's control room. There was nothing here that required his direct intervention. Everyone's tasks had been properly arranged, unless an unexpected event occurred that required his decision. He sat in front of the control console, his eyes resting on the upgrade conditions for a level 13 train. He started weighing his options in his head. Should he upgrade the train to level 13 first, or continue hoarding iron, or to upgrade the armor to level 16? The upgrade conditions were displayed clearly. Consume 4 million units of level 3 iron ore. All cabin accessories must exceed level 220 and simultaneously possess over 500 survivors. The conditions were simple, and he had met them all. With almost no hesitation, Chen Mang made his decision. Level 15 armor was temporarily sufficient. He would upgrade the train to level 13 first. He wanted to reach level 15 as soon as possible. He was also very curious to see what changes Xiao Lu would undergo after waking up. After all, this was the first time he had seen a train upgrade condition with a survivor count requirement. And 500 wasn't actually that high. The next moment, as 4 million units of iron ore were crushed within the train, a line of text slowly appeared on the screen. Your train has upgraded to level 13. Unlocked more craftable accessories. Oh, Chen Mang looked at the new accessory list, slightly taken aback, a flash of surprise in his eyes. This was the first time he had seen an accessory that required Thai crystal ore. He finally understood what this rare ore was used for. Controllable nuclear fusion reactor, red tier accessory. Requires nearly 50,000 units of iron ore to craft. Nuclear energy transmission network, red tier accessory. Requires nearly 50,000 units of iron ore. Viper drone production line, red tier accessory. Requires nearly 50,000 units of Thai crystal ore. The first two items were high-end upgrades for the generator and electrical circuit system. For Chen Mang, there was no urgent need, as his current generator and circuit levels were still more than enough. But for other trains, as their levels increased, their generator efficiency would fall short, often requiring them to install 4 or 5 more to compensate. The nuclear reactor could convert energy stones into power with extremely high efficiency, with almost zero loss. And the nuclear energy transmission network was pure black tech. It could transmit power directly through the train's space without needing physical circuits. Very nice. It was just that for him right now. There was no rush. He could wait for Neon City to develop for a few more days. Once iron ore was more abundant, it wouldn't be too late to swap them out. Some things were powerful not because you didn't have them, but because you didn't need to use them yet. As for the Viper drone, that was indeed quite noteworthy. This was a medium-sized unmanned fighter jet. Length, 11.2 meters. Wingspan, 6.5 meters. Height, 3.08 meters. No pilot. It executed attack missions entirely through inputted commands. It could take off right inside the train, flying straight from the inner cabins to the rear cabin, and then launching directly into the air. It's just that. Chen Mang quietly stared at this production line. This thing was definitely good stuff, but in what situation would he actually use it? His train could already fly, and its speed was much faster than this fighter jet. Compared to sending out a fighter jet, it would be better to just have the train itself rush out and sweep the area. But regardless, this thing consumed Thai crystal ore, and his current Thai crystal ore was. He had no idea what to use it for. Over 10 million units of Thai crystal ore were just sitting in the train. It made his hands itch just looking at it. Let's try upgrading it and see. Smashing down 2.75 million units of Thai crystal ore, the production line was crafted and instantly upgraded to level 10, unlocking 2 transcendent effects. Level 5 super effect, ultra-long endurance. The fuselage is equipped with solar panels. The absorbed energy is enough for the fighter jet to achieve infinite operational status, almost never needing to land. Level 10 super effect, ammo consumption halved. Chen Mang's expression was a bit strange. It seems it's not completely useless. A level 10 production line could craft up to level 10 Viper drones. The cost of one level 10 fighter jet was 500,000 units of Thai crystal ore. Cheap. Yes, his first reaction was that it was too cheap. This drone was the textbook definition of high offense, low defense. Its main source of attack was the 4 large-caliber cannons mounted under its wings. It required energy stones embedded as a firepower source. Attack intensity, level 10. Defense intensity, only level 1. Just 500,000 units of Thai crystal ore could be exchanged for a fighter jet with level 10 attack power. What was there to hesitate about? No. Chen Mang paused for a beat, then decided to continue upgrading. This thing, the more he looked at it, the more interesting it got. He consumed another 5.05 million units of Thai crystal ore, pushing the production line straight to level 20, unlocking a new super effect. Fighter jet crafting cost halved. Viper drones could now be crafted up to level 20. The original price of a level 20 Viper drone was 5 million units of Thai crystal ore. After being halved, it was only 2.5 million. Chen Mang glanced at his Thai crystal ore balance, 2.49 million. That's right, he was short exactly 10,000. He had originally planned to craft one to test its effectiveness, but he had to put it on hold for now. Just 2.5 million Thai crystal ore could create a fighter jet with level 20 attack power. And mining a level 4 Thai crystal mine would yield about 10 million. Red tier accessories only needed to be upgraded to level 20 at most. In other words, other trains only needed to reach level 13 and mine a level 4 Thai crystal mine to easily possess a Viper drone with level 20 attack power. A strong sense of crisis instantly welled up in his heart. No good. My armor is only level 15. That's completely insufficient. Level 15 armor was too weak. It had to be at least level 20 armor. But very quickly, Shin-Mang realized another problem. Why had he never seen other trains in the Stone Golem Zone use this thing? Even the Xiao Yezue, a level 14 mechanical train, hadn't deployed any fighter jets. It only took him a few seconds of thought to figure it out. For a fighter jet to take off smoothly inside a train cabin, two conditions had to be met. First, the train's capacity had to be expanded, and expanded significantly. Second, there had to be a minimum takeoff clearance space of 150 meters. Calculating based on a length of 30 meters per cabin, that meant at least 5 consecutive cabins. He met both of these conditions, but for the vast majority of other trains, it was extremely difficult. Figuring this out, Shin-Mang finally breathed a sigh of relief. He had really been spooked just now. He almost thought he wouldn't be able to sleep tonight. But he had to admit, the disparity between offense and defense was truly massive. Building level 20 defense was so incredibly difficult, yet level 20 attack power could be achieved so easily. The apocalypse really is never fair, Captain. Xiao AI's voice rang out in the control room. A single level 20 Viper drone poses no threat to the Hongxing. Even though its attack power is level 20, its defense is only level 1. It would be very hard for it to penetrate our anti-air fire network, let alone approach the Hongxing. Furthermore, its speed can't catch up to the train. I know. Shin-Mang narrowed his eyes slightly. 1 or 2 don't mean anything, but if it's a few hundred, that's a different story. As long as the anti-air firepower hasn't reached the level of a Berlin anti-air tower, you're pretty much just a sitting duck. The only problem is, pulling that off requires consuming a colossal amount of Thai crystal ore. Just then, Xiao AI spoke up again. Captain, Uncle Lee has returned. Someone asked if they can use Thai crystal or Crimson Core Rock, or would to exchange for Hongxing tickets. Thai crystal ore and Crimson Core Rock are fine. Wood is a no. Understood. In the train's control room, Shin-Mang stared intently at the screen in front of him. A somewhat crazy idea was gradually forming in his mind. The greatest strength of the Viper drone was that it could share the train's maximum speed. Other people's fighter jets might have a hard time breaking through the Hongxing's fire network, but his fighter jets were different. With that speed, almost no one could lock onto them, unless they used preemptive blanket fire. The current number of Doomsday machine guns was still too low. On a train hundreds of meters long, 9 guns were completely insufficient. For the foreseeable future, all his iron ore would be poured into defense and firepower, continuing to enhance the train's internal strength. Even though the Hongxing had reached level 13, the Doomsday machine gun was still the most favored firepower accessory in the entire train system. For no other reason than it was cheap and extremely cost-effective. Everyone loved using it, and he was no exception. Copper ore wasn't abundant enough right now to be spent recklessly. Shin-Mang looked out the window at the residents mining iron ore, the corners of his mouth curling up slightly. He currently had several fairly stable sources of iron ore, the mining residents. The solar panels, 2 cosmic transceivers, and a few more still in the crafting process. Add Neon City to the mix, and he had a very clear premonition. The next phase would be a period of true explosive growth. After the train upgraded to level 13, besides unlocking a few new accessories, a brand new function appeared, dream crafting. This function could create various types of dreams and project them directly into the brains of sleeping crew members. It required consuming dream stones and was used to enhance mental strength. It felt quite similar to the virtual combat training space, except one enhanced physical attributes, while the other focused on mental strength. Shin-Mang looked at the brand new button on the console and chuckled. So this was what dream stones were used for. But he thought of an even better way to use it. His gaze shifted to the single bed in the corner of the room. Embedded in it was a dream stone with 99% capacity. The level 100 super effect of this bed was, after embedding a dream stone, every time you dream, there is a probability of bringing an item from the dream into reality. The higher the item's value, the greater the dream stone consumption. So what was there to think about? Xiao AI, after I fall asleep, create a dream for me where I'm mining in a level 10 iron mine. Xiao AI's voice came from the control room, sounding a bit hesitant. Captain, 1 block of level 10 iron ore is equivalent to 1 billion units of iron ore. The value is too high. Will the Dreamstone have enough capacity to bring it out? Let's just try it first. If it doesn't work, we'll figure something else out, Chun Mang continued. That lock of hair I gave you last time. Have you found anything from your research? I have some clues. It doesn't look like human hair, but more like that of a star behemoth. A star behemoth? Chun Mang frowned slightly, recalling his last nightmare. That really wasn't a pleasant dream. But the woman by the beach back then didn't look like a star behemoth either. He didn't say anything more, just quietly waited for nightfall with a bit of anticipation in his heart. Soon, it was completely dark. Chun Mang finished showering, got fully prepared, and lay down on the bed, carrying a clear sense of expectation. But perhaps because he was too expectant, he tossed and turned and just couldn't fall asleep. It was only then that he suddenly realized the train had countless things to keep you awake, but nothing specifically designed to help you sleep. Captain, do you need sleep assistance? Playing music? No. Reducing oxygen levels. That's called passing out, damn it. Half an hour later, in a groggy state, Chun Mang finally fell asleep. Perhaps because he had been constantly thinking about mining. When he appeared in a level 10 iron mine holding a pickaxe, he vaguely realized he was dreaming. But very quickly, he suppressed that thought, afraid that if he woke up even a little bit, everything would be ruined. The level 10 ore was unimaginably beautiful, glowing brilliantly with a myriad of colors. Chun Mang excitedly grabbed his level 10 pickaxe and rushed up to mine, working even harder than an actual resident. This was the first time he had mined with his own hands since coming to this world. Even back on Master Kuen's train, he had never done this directly. The feeling wasn't bad at all. Next to him were 20 bottles of Coke and an oxygen generator, prepared so thoroughly it was almost excessive. As time ticked past midnight, Uncle Lee returned from Neon City and found Xiao AI in cabin number 2. Boss Xiao AI, could you take me to see Master Mang? I want to report today's data. The results are excellent. Master Mang will definitely be very happy to hear it. I'm busy. Master Mang is mining. Mining? Uncle Lee froze, his face full of shock. When he came back, he did see the residents mining out in the field. But what was this about Master Mang going mining? He had only left Neon City for a day. Had the Hongxing fallen on such hard times? What kind of massive crisis could have happened to force Master Mang to step in personally? Yeah, Xiao AI, who was squatting down repairing a mech, didn't even bother turning his head. Mining in a dream. Go get some rest. Report tomorrow morning. If possible, it's best you don't come until noon. Uncle Lee sensed that something was off. Boss Xiao AI, what do you mean? I don't mean anything. Go to sleep. Don't bother me. Xiao AI waved his hand, too lazy to explain further. The captain had been mining all night in his dream. If he woke up tomorrow morning and actually managed to bring out a block of level 10 iron ore, then no matter what Uncle Lee said, the captain's mood would be fantastic. But if he couldn't bring it out and was exhausted from a whole night of work, his expression would probably be very ugly, and Uncle Lee would most likely become the collateral damage. To be honest, he felt the chances of bringing it out weren't high. The super effect stated very clearly, the probability of bringing out an item was extremely low. It had already happened once before. Such a low probability event was unlikely to happen twice in a row. Life doesn't just keep handing out favors. The probability was too small, so Uncle Lee had already decided to try not to go looking for the captain to nag him with reports tomorrow, to avoid bringing a scolding upon himself. Unfortunately, Uncle Lee returned to breeding cabin number 15, looking a bit regretfully at the report in his hand. The results of the first day of the trial run were clearly excellent, yet Master Mang had gone to bed so early. Xiao AI's body in Neon City still hadn't returned. He was working with Li Shiji and Sister Qi to fix some illogical points discovered today. Currently, he was the only one on the entire train who fully grasped this data. Uncle Lee, you're back. The young man who always followed Uncle Lee walked over with a bright smile. Yeah, I was going to find Master Mang to report, but who knew he'd already be asleep? What happened on the train today? I walked past resident cabin number 8 and saw Brother Biao hung up on the wall. What? A lot happened today, but you weren't there. Your clearance isn't high enough, and no one explained it to you clearly. You can only look and guess for yourself. First, we went to the city ruins. Then there seemed to be a portal going back and forth. Finally, we fought another train. Bioka was caught in the self-destruction of that train during the battle. He was heavily injured, which is why he's hung up on the wall. I want to take a look. The injuries are really severe. They pulled out a whole 106 pieces of shrapnel from his body. Master Mang even said it's a good thing Biaozi is tough. Anyone else would definitely be dead. Hearing this, Uncle Li felt it deeply and nodded meaningfully. With your status, it's true you can't come into contact with the core matters yet. But it's fine. Just keep working hard and showing your worth. Once I finish building the zombie monster cage, it's not impossible for you to secure a solid position in the breeding cabin. Hand me the gloves. I'm going to check on the progress. Uncle Li, you've been working since last night. Aren't you going to sleep? Only useless people sleep. Uncle Li, you just said Master Mang is sleeping. Uncle Li remained expressionless and silent for a moment, then slapped himself. I mean, I'm relatively stupid, so the clumsy bird has to start flying early. I can't sleep. Give me a few cans of Coke. Morning came. Today was Christmas Eve. In cabin number 2, the Armor Research Center, Xiao AI stood frozen in place. On the display screen on his cheek, 2 words slowly appeared. I'm screwed. Not someone else being screwed, but him. He was screwed. It seemed, perhaps, he was truly screwed. Chen Mang had finished washing up. He lit a cigarette and sat in his chair, smoking it in silence. Only then did he maintain a calm expression and say, Xiao AI, I'm giving you 1 minute. Get your ass to the control room immediately. Understood. Very soon after, Xiao AI walked into the control room, feeling a bit apprehensive. Captain, your orders? Repeat the order I gave you last night. Through dream crafting, after you, Captain, fell asleep, I was to create a level 10 iron ore and a level 10 pickaxe. Yeah. Chen Mang nodded, pausing for a moment. Finally unable to hold it in any longer, his expression suddenly exploded. He grabbed the can of Coke on the table and threw it straight at Xiao AI. He roared. Then you tell me, what the hell is this damn can of Coke? This morning, when he saw the dream stone at the head of the bed flashing, Chen Mang was thrilled to the extreme. Bringing an item out of a dream was an extremely low probability event. He had almost no hope, but unexpectedly, he actually hit the jackpot. 1 block of level 10 iron ore was equivalent to 1 billion units of iron ore. He had struck it rich instantly. Even if he didn't get the ore, bringing out a level 10 pickaxe was acceptable. It was better than nothing, after all. But when he placed his hand on the dream stone, what emerged from the portal next to it was a can of Coke. His mind almost collapsed. Only then did he remember that in his dream last night, besides the mine and the pickaxe, there seemed to be a few cans of Coke and an oxygen generator. It would have been fine if he couldn't bring out the other things, but he had finally managed to trigger the low-probability event, and it brought out a damn Coke. How could he not be furious? The more he thought about it, the angrier he got. Chen Mang strode up to Xiao AI, kicked him hard, and roared. Did I order you to create Coke in the dream? Did I? And no, you didn't, Xiao AI replied weakly. I just expanded my thinking a bit. I thought since it was your first time mining, Captain, you'd probably be tired. So I prepared Coke and an oxygen generator. You motherf. Chen Mang took a deep breath, forcing himself to calm down, and pointed at the door. Get your ass back to cabin number 2. I don't want to see you today. This expansion of yours, you did a great job. Next time, don't expand. Ever again. Xiao AI didn't dare delay and hurriedly left the control room. When he saw the captain pull a can of Coke from the portal, he knew he was truly screwed today. Contrary to what he thought last night, unexpectedly, 2 low-probability events had triggered consecutively. It's just that the final result was still just a can of Coke. Come back. Just as Xiao AI was about to leave the control room, Chen Mang spoke coldly again. Take this can of Coke and test it. See if there's any difference between it and the Coke produced on the train. Yes, sir. Boss AI. Old Zhu from cabin number 2, who was preparing to go find Master Mang to report, smiled slyly as he watched Xiao AI walk out. Is Master Mang awake? Yeah. Xiao AI nodded, his expression calm. If you have something to report, just go right in. It's nothing at all. Old Zhu laughed it off, looking around and pretending to sightsee, then very naturally turned around and walked back the way he came. There was still a faint footprint on Boss AI's body, which was enough to show that Master Mang's current mood was definitely not very good. Going in to report at a time like this was just asking for trouble. His matter wasn't urgent anyway. He could talk about it later. Who would willingly walk into a disaster? This boss AI was really wicked. He clearly didn't say another word, deliberately wanting to see him make a fool of himself too. Very soon after, Chun Mang tossed the matter to the back of his mind. A block of level 10 iron ore was still too illusory and unrealistic. He hadn't placed much hope in it to begin with. The train's main path of development still had to rely on existing means. Currently, the train had 12.56 million units of iron ore. He needed to continue accumulating to carry out another comprehensive upgrade. All types of resources were somewhat lacking. Titanium crystal ore had almost hit rock bottom, although there were still over 10 million units of copper ore. If they encountered a tough battle, this amount would only be enough for a few rounds of blanket fire. Resources. He still had too few. At this current stage, his greatest hope was entirely placed on Neon City. Chun Mang pondered for a moment, then spoke up. Call Uncle Lee over here to report on yesterday's revenue. Yes, sir, Xiao AI's voice echoed from the control room. Chun Mang let out a sigh, leaning back in his chair, his gaze relaxing. He said to Xiao Fong standing nearby, massage my shoulders. Use a bit of force. Even though he had been mining all night in a dream, when he woke up, his body was genuinely sore and aching, filled with a sense of lethargy. He didn't want to do anything. He just wanted to go back to sleep. He was very familiar with this state from his old world. As long as the dream was realistic enough, the next morning you'd definitely have a sore back and aching knees. It was truly exhausting. Actually, he had a very big dream, so big that he had never spoken it aloud. He hoped that one day, the world could be at peace. If peace was impossible, then at the very least, his Hongxing had to be safe enough to withstand any external disaster. When that time came and resources weren't lacking, he would give himself a month-long vacation. During that time, he wouldn't have to think about anything. He'd just live a peaceful, decadent life inside the Hongxing. To have that sense of security, the prerequisite was that the armor level had to be high enough. Even though he didn't bring out what he wanted from last night's dream, only managing to get a can of Coke, this whole thing was still very miraculous. Items from dreams could be brought into reality. That meant nearly limitless potential. Just then, Uncle Lee walked into the control room. He stood a bit nervously in front of Chun Mang and pulled a folded piece of A4 paper from his chest pocket. Master Mang, I'll begin the report now. Yeah, go ahead. Given permission, Uncle Lee took a deep breath and continued. Last night was the first day of Neon City's official operation. The total operating time was 24 hours. The total number of train captains entering and exiting the city was 208. The peak concurrent number of captains staying was 101. Among them, level 6 trains and below accounted for 76%. The remaining 24% of high-level trains contributed 72% of the total revenue. The spending power of low-level trains is extremely weak, almost negligible. Most only bought some cheap daily necessities. For example, spatial pockets. These captains have almost no demands for quality of life. They even hesitated for several minutes before deciding whether to buy toilet paper and ultimately chose to give up. Total revenue reached 18.49 million Hongxing tickets. Of that, revenue from the custom shops was 2.385 million Hongxing tickets, accounting for 12.9%. Revenue from the mechanical train accessory shop was 10.5577 million Hongxing tickets, accounting for 57.1%. Revenue from Sun City was 1.78 million Hongxing tickets, accounting for 9.62%. The lottery wheel created by Li Shiji, along with some resurrection tokens like the Beggar one, brought in 2.321 million Hongxing tickets, accounting for 12.54%. The remaining 7.84% of revenue came from the convenience store, the flesh train shop, and other stores. Uncle Lee paused for a beat, then continued. All of the above revenue is almost entirely net profit. The staff at the custom shops don't require salaries. They only consume Neon City's energy cores to recharge. Most of the goods in the stores are supplied by the Hongxing, and Sun City's revenue is from commissions. Just yesterday alone, the 208 captains used a total of 57.56 million units of iron ore and 1.0 1.08 million units of titanium crystal or to exchange for 58.73 million Hongxing tickets. Of that, 18.49 million Hongxing tickets were completely spent within Neon City and have been recovered. The corresponding amount of iron ore is pure profit. Of the remaining 40.24 million Hongxing tickets, 38.23 million were exchanged back into iron ore when the captains left. Only 2.01 million Hongxing tickets remain unexchanged. Some captains chose to keep them for future use. The total resources currently held by Neon City are 19.42 million units of iron ore and 1.08 million units of titanium crystal ore. Of that, 18.49 million units of iron ore is net profit, which can be withdrawn at any time without affecting the city's operations. The remaining 930,000 units of iron ore and 1.08 million units of titanium crystal ore are liabilities used to back the 2.01 million Hongxing tickets currently in circulation. Hearing this, these were truly numbers that would wake anyone right up. Chen Meng leaned back in his chair, his eyelids drooping slightly as he listened to Uncle Li's report. The large amount of data sounded exhausting, but the presentation was very clear and easy to understand. He opened his eyes, looked at Uncle Li, and chuckled. In other words, as long as we keep 2.01 million units of iron or to maintain Neon City's normal operations, the remaining 10+ million units of iron ore are all profit, right? That's right. Uncle Li hurriedly nodded, then looked at the A4 paper in his hand and continued. The 18.49 million units of iron ore is net profit, but crafting goods for the train still consumed a portion of iron ore. The total crafting cost for all the goods sold was 488,000 units of iron ore and 8,900 units of wood. This expense isn't on Neon City's books. It belongs to the Hongxing. Chen Meng nodded in satisfaction. Then I'll take all 1.08 million units of titanium crystal ore. As for the remaining 17.41 million units of iron ore, bring it out for me to use later. Yes, sir. Uncle Li replied immediately, but still feeling uneasy, he steeled himself and continued. Master Meng, yesterday was Neon City's first day of operation. The grand opening effect was very strong. The food and custom shops will be packed at first, but later on, it'll be very hard to maintain such high profit margins. For example, the custom shops. People only need to experience it once. They won't keep spending money on it, because they already have free alternatives on their own trains. Furthermore, items like spatial pockets, refrigerators, and clothes aren't consumables. When we reopen next week, the people who already bought them definitely won't buy them again anytime soon. Revenue will drop sharply. The first day's results were beautiful, but there were too many special factors involved. He had to make this clear to Master Meng, because next week, they definitely wouldn't be able to hit the 18.49 million Hongxing tickets mark like yesterday. Even 8.49 million wasn't guaranteed. If he didn't explain it clearly, it would be very easy for Master Meng to have his expectations set too high and end up disappointed. Chen Meng smiled and waved his hand. You can step down. I understand the situation. Watching Uncle Li's back as he left the control room, he narrowed his eyes, saying nothing more. In theory, that was true. But next Monday, when Neon City reopened, the number of captains coming here would be significantly higher. After all, he had given Mengda a massive amount of free admission tickets to Neon City to distribute. Mengda was probably one of the very few creatures on the entire planet who could travel between different zones. Even if he could only randomly teleport 10 times a day, it was enough to bring him a steady stream of new users. Moreover, over the next week, these first 208 guests could absolutely bring in new people, accumulating traffic and building momentum for the following Monday. This run of Neon City didn't allow free trading with resources, but it mandated that all transactions between captains be settled with Hongxing tickets. When the city reopened and the number of people increased, this ecosystem would form automatically. High-level trains were still the core because their spending power was strong enough. But low-level trains were also incredibly important. Low-level trains might be poor, but they had numbers, which were used to gather popularity. Furthermore, low-level trains would eventually grow up. As long as they weren't destroyed, they would definitely become high-level trains. The environment would force people to grow up faster than anyone else. Not long after, Chen Meng looked at the resource panel on the console and chuckled. 29.97 million units of iron ore, 2.56 million units of wood, 16.74 million units of copper ore, 2.32 million units of crimson core rock, 3.67 million units of titanium crystal ore. Things were looking up again. His resources were like a roller coaster, sometimes abundant, sometimes scarce, and the fluctuations were ridiculously huge. To upgrade quickly from level 14 to level 15, each cabin needed 5 million iron ore. From level 15 to level 16, it jumped to 10 million per cabin. For 16 cabins in total, that was 160 million. After having the cost, it was still 80 million. 80 million. This was absolutely not a small number. He could only accumulate it slowly. Mining this week, plus Neon City opening next Monday, could basically reach this number. The two greatest strengths of Neon City were, first, profit, second, loans. For example, this time, the profit was 18.49 million Hongxing tickets, and the loan portion was the 2.01 million Hongxing tickets that the captains didn't exchange, choosing to keep them. These two things were equally important. The 2.01 million Hongxing tickets were equivalent to an interest-free loan that the Hongxing was borrowing from other trains. If an emergency occurred, he could absolutely use this loan directly to turn the tide. In the future, as the number of trains in Neon City increased and its reputation grew, the amount of Hongxing tickets retained would also become larger and larger. That meant the Hongxing, through Neon City, would be borrowing billions, even tens of billions of resources interest-free from countless trains, using the power of the entire globe to feed the Hongxing. This was the true allure of Neon City. As long as it developed long enough, the resources the Hongxing held in its hands would be terrifyingly unimaginable. By then, mining resources would probably only account for a very small fraction. The vast majority would come from Neon City. This was the true long-term path. Moreover, this was a completely growing monopoly market. Growth and monopoly. Just having one of the two was enough to be a trump card, let alone having both at the same time. That was an absolute explosion that no one could stop. As long as others didn't have an existence similar to Neon City that allowed free cross-zone trading. Then Chen Meng's Neon City would occupy a unique ecological niche, an irreplaceable position, playing an extremely crucial role in the apocalypse, like a true Garden of Eden. Excellent. Chen Meng leaned back in his chair, chuckling softly. He rested his arms on the armrests and signaled Xiao Fong to massage his shoulders. The most insane part was that Neon City required almost zero operating costs. No employee salaries, no rent, no city management fees, no utility bills, and even the goods cost almost nothing. The only thing consumed was Neon City's inherent level 8 energy core, which currently still had 37% capacity. There was absolutely no need to worry about it running out. Even with continuous use, it could still operate for over 200 years. It was more than enough. In this world, it was rare to find an industry where revenue was practically synonymous with net profit. Even in industries considered ultra-profitable, like eyewear, where the lenses cost a few bucks but sell for hundreds, they still had to bear countless costs behind the scenes, from the supply chain and store locations to customer acquisition costs. True profit never lay solely in the product itself. The good news from Uncle Li finally soothed Chen Meng's morning frustration, putting him in a pretty good mood right now. He shifted his gaze back to the control screen. He directly consumed 2.5 million units of titanium crystal or to craft a level 20 Viper drone to test its effectiveness. Right after, he consumed another 100,000 units of iron ore to craft a new spatial portal in cabin number 10. Xiao AI. I'm here. Clear out all active residents in the cabins from number 10 onwards. Yes, sir. Cabin number 14 already had 2 spatial portals, leading to the movie studio and the entertainment space, respectively. Now, a new spatial portal was added, named the fighter jet hangar. Immediately after, a low humming sound rang out. A fairly large Viper drone slowly emerged from the brand new spatial portal. It parked steadily in cabin number 10, its nose pointed straight toward cabin number 11. This was a small to medium-sized fighter jet, compared to other fighter jets. With a length of 11.2 meters and a wingspan of 6.5 meters, it took up almost a third of the entire cabin's space. Like a massive beast lying there in silence, it gave off an extremely strong sense of oppression. Perfect aerodynamics. Chen Meng stood to the side, observing the level 20 drone before him, his gaze gradually growing heated. No man could resist the allure of excavators and fighter jets. That was indisputable. The entire fuselage was painted black, its lines as sharp as a shark's dorsal fin. The matte black finish made the whole machine exude a powerful, oppressive aura. A massive single exhaust nozzle sat beneath the twin vertical tail fins. The layer of solar panels covering the fuselage was almost invisible to the naked eye, not affecting its aesthetics while providing terrifying endurance. In theory, as long as it wasn't damaged, it could fly continuously without limits. And beneath its wings hung 4 large-caliber cannons. 2 words, absolutely perfect. Heh. Chen Meng let out a soft breath, a sense of satisfaction welling up in his heart. The greatest strength of this drone wasn't its level 20 attack power, but its near-infinite endurance. Once it took off, it could theoretically never need to land. If this were his previous world, and something like this existed, with an even lower crafting cost, he didn't even dare imagine how brutal war would be. Just thinking about it sent chills down his spine. The next moment, a piercing warning siren echoed throughout the cabins of the Hongxing. Red warning lights on the ceiling and sides of the cabins, from number 10 onwards, began flashing continuously. This was a living accessory crafted from the mechanical heart, used to remind residents to quickly evacuate the area when a fighter jet was preparing for takeoff. The rear cabins had also been cleared to serve as a runway. The 2 cosmic transceivers in cabin 12 were pushed to the sides, as was the 40-barrel Cherry Blossom rocket launcher in cabin 13. As for the earth-shattering missile in cabin 14, it only had the launcher, no missile. Because this type could be crafted whenever needed, there was no need to stockpile it. Even breeding cabin number 15 had its runway cleared. The refrigerators and other items were pushed to the sides, and the rear cabin door was thrown wide open. Boom! An eerie blue tail flame erupted fiercely. The surrounding air was instantly distorted by the heat wave, looking like Satan's mocking smile. The level 20 Viper drone began to accelerate, tearing down the cabins, flashing past cabin 11, cabin 12, cabin 13. As it headed straight for cabin 15, the nose of the jet gradually pitched up. Its speed reached the limit, the sound of wind tearing through the air echoing throughout the inside of the Hongxing. With a deafening sonic boom, it shot out of the Hongxing. As soon as it detached from the train, the Viper drone immediately climbed at a near 90-degree angle. The advantage of having no pilot was very clear. Extreme maneuvers didn't need to account for the limits of human endurance. The disadvantage was that it was less flexible. It could only operate according to programmed commands and couldn't react comprehensively in overly complex situations. On the wasteland, Chen Meng stood next to the Hongxing, looking up at the Viper continuously circling in the sky above. As long as it wasn't shot down, it would always hang in the sky from now on, provided, of course, it didn't encounter a polar night or eternal night. A level 20 attack intensity was enough to threaten most high-level trains and powerful monsters. If there were hundreds of these flying in the sky, his sense of security would be stretched to the absolute limit, especially since its speed was synchronized with the train, reaching a maximum of 5,040 kilometers per hour, and with infinite endurance to boot. Calling it the Overlord of the Skies was no exaggeration. What Chen Meng had equipped it with were 2 level 4 energy cores, just crafted using 1 million units of iron ore. Under the condition of maintaining a level 20 attack intensity, these 2 energy cores could power the 4 cannons on the jet for 30 seconds of continuous firing. Thanks to the super effect that halved ammo consumption, the energy drain was still within an acceptable range. Not bad. Chen Meng looked at the scene in the sky, nodding in satisfaction. Then he turned to look at the residents who had gotten off the train to continue mining. The level 4 iron mine from yesterday was almost completely depleted. Currently, only about a tenth of its reserves remained. Once they finished mining the rest of this, or they could go find a new mine. 2 hours later, the Hongxing continued its expedition. The level 4 iron mine was fully excavated, adding another 10.29 million units of iron ore to the train. Then, they moved on to find another mine. Along the way, Chunmeng spotted a level 4 copper mine and decided to mine it first. By this time, the total amount of iron ore in the train had reached 39.16 million units. The goal of upgrading the armor to level 16 was considered half complete. Just looking at this number made him feel at ease. Right then, Erdan's voice rang out from the train's telegraph. "Master Mang, I really don't know what to say. If it's convenient for you, could you come take a look?" Chen Mang didn't overthink it. He immediately adjusted his course and rushed straight to the coordinates Erdan had sent. It was highly likely he had encountered an encounter map, but the difficulty exceeded his ability to handle it, so he was calling for help. The areas bordering the stone golem zone consisted of 5 zones in total: white, yellow, green, plus a red zone. The red zone was even higher than the purple zone. If you wanted to enter higher level zones, you had to pass through here. The red zone itself was considered an absolute high-level zone, because above it, there were only 3 levels left: gold, pink, and 7-color. The 7-color zone was practically the pinnacle of the entire planet. Any train that could stand firm and claim kingship there was the strongest on the planet. Its value and prestige would be at the absolute maximum. Not long after, Chunmeng arrived at the coordinates Erdan had sent, right at the intersection between the stone golem zone and the red zone. At this moment, the traveling frog was parked on the ground. Erdan stood outside the train, staring blankly toward the red zone. The Hongxing slowly came to a stop. Chunmeng stepped out of the driver's cabin, walking on air step by step, until he reached Erdan's side. He frowned slightly as he looked at the red zone ahead, and at that moment, he understood why Erdan had called him over. The scene before him was truly too shocking, almost impossible to describe with words. In the sky above the red zone, hundreds of fighter jets were flying at high speeds, engaged in fierce combat with countless flying monsters. Deafening sonic booms, the roar of machine guns, and the shrieks of monsters blended together, forming a literal war. A massive-scale war between trains and monsters was erupting. This scene was similar to the zombie outbreak in the Zombie Valley back then. The only difference was that last time they were directly involved, while this time they were just observing from the outside. Chunmeng immediately checked the train's log. No dropped items had been pulled in by the powerful magnet. Clearly, the magnet couldn't absorb items across zones. A bit of a pity. The red zone had a maximum monster level of 18. The combat scene was incredibly brutal, with countless monsters being blown into bloody mists in midair. But he had to admit, the trains in the red zone were indeed extraordinary. The combat power of each one was absolutely terrifying. Chunmeng stood and watched for a full 10 minutes, and didn't see a single train destroyed. Even though the fighter jets had been almost completely wiped out, because their defense was too low, they dropped the moment they were touched. Many of the attack methods used by the trains here, he had never seen or even heard of before. For example, that dark blue train over there. It had an accessory resembling a lightning rod mounted on top, discharging massive electrical arcs that formed a lightning field covering dozens of meters around it. Any monster that dared to approach was instantly incinerated into ash by the electrical arcs. Chunmeng quietly lit a cigarette, standing there appreciating the battlefield before him. As train levels increased, the combat process truly provided a visually stunning experience. Like the 8 immortals crossing the sea, each showing their unique prowess. Everyone had their own trump cards. Just looking at it showed that the road ahead was still long, but also full of excitement. The scene was indeed very shocking. Chunmeng turned his head to look at Erdan, who was standing next to him with a dumbfounded expression, and said calmly, "But you called me here. Just to watch this? Is there nothing else?" Erdan snapped out of his daze, pointing at the brutal battlefield in the red zone, and muttered, "It's a long story. I was originally looking for encounter maps, but this morning I ran into a very special one. It's a puzzle-type encounter map. This map doesn't belong to our zone, but to the red zone ahead. I tried it, and the result was failure. The price to pay was..." Erdan swallowed hard. The major hazard event. Monster respawn broke out in this red zone, turning the place into this. Before this, the red zone wasn't nearly this lively. Chunmeng kept an expressionless face, staying silent for a few seconds before slowly speaking up. Dan, do you feel like you carry a bit of bad luck? He glanced over, his voice neither heavy nor light. A few months ago, the green zone, the ice and snow world, was perfectly peaceful. You went there and messed around, and ended up causing an avalanche. Then the mechanical zombie king started a massacre. He paused for a beat, then continued. Now it's happening all over again. You're not a spy against humanity, are you? Chen Meng smirked coldly. Taking the destruction of mankind as your personal mission? Dan was speechless. Never mind that. Chen Meng shook his head, changing the subject. An encounter map in the red zone. How did you get in? Natural boundaries existed between zones. Whether in the air or underground, they couldn't be crossed. Encountering the train tunnel before was just a special case, let alone entering an encounter map in the red zone. Over there. Dan pointed at a patch of withered grass at the edge of the red zone, right at the intersection of the two zones. When I passed by, I noticed a green sprout among the withered grass. Having something like this in the middle of winter is very strange, right? So I casually fired a magazine from my machine gun at it. Do you have so much copper or that you can't use it all? Chen Meng asked, glancing at him. That's not it, Master Meng, Dan hurriedly explained. In my experience, abnormal situations like that are usually the trigger conditions for encounter maps. Sure enough, after I shot it, a portal appeared. The system announced that only the train captain was allowed to enter the encounter map. It's a puzzle-type encounter map, with 3 stages in total. Passing each stage grants a reward, and clearing all 3 gives a final grand prize. But if you fail at any stage, you can't re-enter the map, and it simultaneously triggers a regional crisis. I failed right at the first stage, Dan smiled bitterly. And then, well, you see the result. Chen Meng looked at the battlefield where the trains were slaughtering monsters in the red zone, his gaze gradually becoming complex. The high-level trains here were too strong. Each one had its own tricks. For a long time, not a single one had been destroyed. It looked like a brutal war, but it was actually a one-sided slaughter. The problem was, just engaging in combat consumed a massive amount of resources. If these trains found out that Dan was the cause, he'd probably be hunted down relentlessly the moment he set foot in the red zone in the future. They don't know you caused this, do they? They probably do, Dan said quietly. After I failed, a panel popped up. It announced that due to the failure of the traveling frog, the red zone, Sunset Coast, would experience the major hazard event, monster respawn. Killed monsters yield no rewards, and they respawn extremely fast. This lasts for a full 48 hours. You're screwed. The corner of Chen Meng's mouth twitched. Killing monsters without rewards was no different from just burning resources. And with fast respawns, killing one was a pure loss. Dan. Yeah. When we enter the red zone, you better find a place to hide first. Chen Meng said bluntly. Wait until I'm strong enough to dominate the red zone before you show your face. Otherwise, I'm afraid I won't be able to protect you. Tell me, what's the content of the first stage? It's impossible to clear. Dan shook his head pessimistically. It's a test from the mechanical civilization. You have to take an exam. The questions are all directly related to the mechanical civilization. For example, the first question asks when the mechanical civilization was born. There are 4 choices. Who the hell would know that? Dan sighed. I just guessed an answer, and then I failed. I chose C at the time, the year 2932. But I don't even know what calendar they use. 2932 of which calendar? There are 5 questions in total. 4 multiple choice, 1 fill in the blank. You have to answer all of them correctly to pass the first stage. The 4 multiple choice questions aren't too hard. Chen Meng's eyes narrowed slightly. He had quite a few train tokens. At worst, he could just keep creating new trains to test the answers. He'd find the right ones eventually. The only thing was, if every failure triggered a regional crisis, then this red zone would probably be completely ruined in no time. Let's try it first. The next moment, a test subject from the Hongxing appeared, driving a level 1 train equipped with a heavy machine gun. He slowly drove out of the locomotive and stopped next to Chen Meng and Dan. That's right. The person sitting in the driver's cabin was the burly man who used to work in the funeral business before the apocalypse. Almost all dangerous tests were handled by him. His leveling speed was the fastest among the civilians, almost without exception. Some people were just born to be guinea pigs. Master Mang, the burly man, stepped out of the cabin with a resolute expression, walking up to Chun Mang. Awaiting orders. Use the heavy machine gun on your train to shoot that green sprout in the withered grass. You'll enter an encounter map. On the first multiple-choice question, eliminate option C. If you answer correctly, continue with the remaining 3 multiple-choice questions. If you fail, memorize the wrong answer. If you guess them all right, memorize the correct answers. Understood. The man nodded and returned to the cabin. 3 minutes later, Chun Mang silently looked toward the red zone. By now, the sky over the zone was covered in dark clouds. Lightning bolts as thick as water barrels continuously struck the ground. Some hit trains, some hit monsters, and some smashed into rubble and dirt. The destructive power wasn't too great, but strangely, the trains struck by lightning immediately stalled and began to turn around and flee, looking incredibly battered. Master Mang. The man returned from the encounter map, looking apologetic. I chose B for the first multiple-choice question. As soon as I selected it, the system said it was wrong. I failed. Then a panel popped up. The panel said that due to the failure of the Born to Die, the Red Zone, Sunset Coast, would experience the major hazard event, rolling thunder. For all trains struck by lightning, the ammo consumption of all their firepower weapons will increase tenfold for 1 minute. It's fine. Chun Mang shook his head. For him, it really was fine, but the trains in the red zone were clearly not doing well at all. He looked at the chaotic scene of them fleeing, his voice dropping. Xiao AI, call Li Shiji out from Neon City. Tell him to come take a look. The test had proven that every failure would trigger a new major hazard event. They couldn't keep blindly using trial and error. This type of puzzle encounter map was Li Shiji's specialty. Letting him handle it was almost a guaranteed win. As long as they passed the 3 stages, all the crises in the red zone would be resolved. They couldn't take any more risks. These trains looked very strong. Their iron ore reserves were definitely not small. Chun Mang was still counting on pulling them into Neon City to spend their resources later. He couldn't let them get completely wiped out in these major events. Very quickly, Li Shiji received the urgent order. With a serious expression, he drove a brand new level 1 train. He shot the green sprout in the withered grass and entered the encounter map. 12 minutes later, Chun Mang stood there, taking a sharp breath of cold air. He looked down to light a cigarette, watched the pale blue smoke, and then turned to Air Dan. Actually, that monster respawn event, at most, it just consumes the resources of the trains in the red zone. Lasting 48 hours, it probably won't cause too many casualties, right? Right at that moment, in the red zone, aside from the dense swarm of monsters and the rolling thunder in the dark clouds, it also began to snow. Large, goose-feather snowflakes blanketed the ground. The scene was both beautiful and chilling, but in this situation, it only made people feel more uneasy. Master Mang. Li Shiji shook his head apologetically. I chose A. I failed too. I looked for clues for a long time, but found nothing. In the end, I had to guess. A 50-50 chance, and I lost. Then the panel popped up, saying that due to the failure of the Little Zhuge, the Red Zone, Sunset Coast, would experience the major hazard event, blizzard. For all trains touched by the snow, their maximum speed is reduced by 50%. Chun Mang fell silent. At least he had confirmed that the answer to the first multiple-choice question was D. But if this kept up, by the time he entered the red zone, his train would probably be the only one left surviving. He glanced at the battlefield. The defense of the trains wasn't too high, but their firepower was incredibly fierce. The monsters simply couldn't get close. Li Shiji. Yes, Master Mang? Next time you name a train, don't call it Little Zhuge anymore. Call it Little Crybaby. That way, if you lose, it won't be as embarrassing. If the initial events hadn't caused major casualties yet, then right now, if this wasn't resolved quickly, at least half the trains in the red zone would be knocked out of the game. Especially that train with the lightning rod. At first, it was incredibly aggressive, surrounded by electrical arcs, incinerating any monster that got close. But after the rolling thunder appeared, the continuous lightning strikes caused it to stall immediately. It could no longer emit electrical arcs and could only turn and flee. Under the effects of the blizzard, its speed was cut in half. It looked absolutely pathetic. All right, Chen Meng said in a deep voice. Let me try one last time. If there were still no clues this time, he would leave immediately. He couldn't keep testing it. The trains in the red zone could barely withstand 4 major hazard events, but they absolutely couldn't survive a 5th. The Hongxing's machine gun fired at the green sprout in the withered grass. Instantly, a portal appeared in front of Chen Meng. He stepped inside. Before him was a desk and chair in a classroom. A panel popped up, beginning to introduce the information about this encounter map. Setting up a classroom scene at a time like this, it was truly full of malice. Brave pioneer, welcome to the encounter map. Spring returns to the withered tree. The most tender green sprout is born in the forest after a wildfire, and the purest hope and beauty are also born in the world after the apocalypse. This is a puzzle-type encounter map. If you possess enough wisdom or experience, you may take the corresponding rewards from here. As a train captain, you shoulder many responsibilities, but today, you must shoulder even more. If you fail to clear this zone will face a regional disaster crisis. Please try your best to clear it, or seek help from those with sufficient wisdom and keen observation skills. There are 3 stages in total. Passing each stage grants a corresponding reward. Clearing all 3 grants the final reward. Stage 1. Please provide the correct answers for the 4 multiple-choice questions and 1 fill-in-the-blank question below. Answering all correctly will clear the stage. Time limit, 15 minutes. The next moment, a crisp sound rang in his ears. Chen Meng sat in the chair and looked up. A 15-minute countdown timer had appeared on the blackboard. 14 minutes and 59 seconds. He didn't rush to look at the exam paper, but instead observed the classroom around him. About 80 square meters, exactly the size of a normal classroom. There was only 1 desk and chair, and no invigilator. The classroom was completely sealed. No windows, the door was shut tight, and the ceiling and walls revealed no clues whatsoever. An absolutely enclosed space. Chen Meng quickly scanned the room, took a deep breath, and looked at the exam paper with a hint of nervousness. Question 1. In what year was the mechanical civilization born? Question 2. What is the highest current level of a mechanical civilization train? Question 3. Which scientist of the mechanical civilization invented the most accessory blueprints? Question 4. How many habitable planets does the mechanical civilization possess? Question 5. Mechanical Little Princess Tua Tua, the most popular figure in recent years, is currently how old? The first 4 are multiple choice. The last one is fill in the blank. Great. I don't know a single one. When the test members came out, they brought all these questions with them. He had also asked Xiao AI and Sister Chi in Neon City. The answer he got was, none of them knew, especially Sister Chi, who just shook her head at every question. Chen Meng looked at the test paper and the pen on the desk, paused for a beat, and then chose answer D for the first question. The next moment, a flash of white light shone on the test paper, and a red checkmark appeared next to the first question. Graded on the spot. Correct answer. 1 down. The first step is always the hardest. Trading the entire Sunset Coast red zone just to confirm the first multiple-choice answer. As for the second question, Chen Meng sat in his chair, his eyes narrowing slightly as a clue suddenly flashed through his mind. The control panel had given 3 very clear pieces of information at the start: Brave Pioneer, Doomsday Conductor, and the Calculation Zone. This was a puzzle-type encounter map. If one had enough wisdom or experience and keen observation skills, these 3 hints practically pointed straight to the answer. First, this encounter map obviously wasn't a test for the people of the mechanical civilization. It was meant for the native inhabitants of this planet, people who had survived the apocalypse just like them. Second, since it was a puzzle, the answers had to be right here in this space. Otherwise, it would be a knowledge test, not a puzzle. Especially the word or. Experience could give you the answer immediately, while wisdom could deduce it. Third, keen observation skills. That meant the clues were hidden in easily overlooked places. Chen Meng didn't hesitate anymore. Glancing at the countdown timer on his chest, 13 minutes left, he immediately grabbed the test paper and stood up on the desk. He held it close to the light to examine it carefully, but didn't find anything special. He jumped down, flipped the desk over, and checked the bottom and the drawers. Still no clues. Looking around the classroom, he reflexively reached into his pocket for a cigarette. Then he remembered that when entering this encounter map, no extra items were allowed. He was completely empty-handed. No clues. He walked to the classroom door and tried pushing and pulling it a few times. It wouldn't budge. He pushed hard against the surrounding walls, but they didn't shift either. He knocked on every section of the wall for a long time, but found no secret compartments. By now, the countdown timer only had 7 minutes left. Chen Meng stood still, scanning his surroundings, and muttered, "When I get out of here, I'll burn some incense for the destroyed trains at the Sunset Coast. Don't blame me down there. Blame Air Dan. He's the ringleader." He crouched down to inspect the floor for clues, but the smooth concrete floor looked completely unsuspicious. He started observing everything all over again, his gaze stopping at the blackboard. Chen Meng walked over and tapped his knuckles lightly against the center of the blackboard a few times. A crisp, hollow sound echoed back. His eyes lit up, and he began feeling around the edges of the blackboard. Soon, he found a small button hidden in a recess under the bottom edge. It finally showed itself. Well hidden, Chen Meng thought with a smirk. He immediately pressed the small button. He had finally found a clue. At this point, the countdown timer had 6 minutes left. The next moment, the blackboard split down the middle and slowly slid open to both sides, revealing a display screen behind it. The screen lit up, showing a beautiful female robot dressed provocatively, swaying her body to a heavy beat echoing through the classroom. Every movement matched the music perfectly. If you ignored her mechanical left arm, she looked just like a famous dancer. Her top was a tight crop top, highlighting her extreme curves. Chen Meng frowned slightly and tried touching the screen, but there was no response. The video kept playing. Not long after, the scene switched to the next beauty, doing similar sexy dance moves. After a few women, the screen suddenly showed 5 or 6 bearded, muscular men, also doing sexy dance moves. Thick leg hair, long white socks, sticking their tongues out with bulging muscles. It made him a little nauseous. But right then, Chen Meng suddenly realized something. The video started looping from the beginning. He stared at it, muttering under his breath. The whole video, a total of 4 women and 6 men. For women, the number 4 matches the number of multiple-choice questions. Could the answers to the 4 multiple-choice questions be on these 4 women? By now, the countdown timer only had 5 minutes left. Chen Meng didn't dare waste a single second. He focused on the looping video, trying to memorize every detail of the 4 women. The backgrounds were chaotic. Some were in a yoga studio, some on a rooftop. He had to extract a massive amount of information simultaneously and find a connection. If Li Shige were here to do this, it would be a perfect match. Unfortunately, the video couldn't be fast-forwarded or rewound. Every time, he had to watch all 6 men finish their dance before it looped back to the 4 women. The multiple-choice answers were only A, B, C, D. Where was the clue? Hair clips? Hair color? Age? No. Not distinct enough. Backgrounds? Too chaotic. I already know the answer to question 1 is D. So let's try to find a connection between the first woman and the letter D. Wait. Chen Meng suddenly froze. Even though he found it a bit unbelievable, he quickly grabbed his pen and jotted it down on the desk. The cup size of the first woman was a D cup. He wasn't sure if this was the clue, but he'd write it down for now. Very quickly, he noted down the corresponding features of the other 3 women. The results were, in order, D, C, D, A. Chen Meng took a tense, deep breath and spread the test paper out on the desk. He didn't sit down, but directly chose answer C for the second multiple-choice question. The next moment, the test paper flashed with white light, and a red check mark appeared next to the question. Correct. The answer to the second question was indeed C. Feeling more confident, he quickly finished the remaining 2 multiple-choice questions. All correct. The answers to the 4 multiple-choice questions were D, C, D, A. Awesome. Chen Meng couldn't help but praise himself. Looking at the countdown timer with only 3 minutes left, he focused back on the video on the screen. Just the last question left. The fill-in-the-blank question asked, Mechanical Little Princess Tua Tua, the most popular figure in recent years, is how old? 2 numbers popped into his head, 10 and 6. 10 was the total number of people in the video, and 6 was the number of men in the second half. Both seemed plausible. After all, she was a little princess. 16 or 62 both sounded possible. But his intuition told him it wasn't that simple. Chen Meng stared at the video, not missing a single detail. This was the first time in both his lives that he had watched a sexy video over and over again. To this extent, especially having to watch the men's part too. The mechanical civilization really knew how to mess with people. Since the 4 women provided the answers to the 4 multiple-choice questions, he leaned more toward the possibility that the clue for the last question lay with the 6 men in the second half. But if it was just the number 6, there was absolutely no need to design 6 men with such distinct features. They could have used any other imagery. Deliberately emphasizing these traits proved the clue was right there. Wait. A flash of insight struck Chen Meng's mind like lightning. He quickly grabbed his pen, cross-referencing the video as he wrote. Beard, white socks, white tank top, rugged style. At this moment, the countdown timer only had 1 minute and 58 seconds left. On the desk, he had written out a sequence of numbers. 100110. That's right. 6 men, each representing a binary digit. The real clue was right here. It was ones and zeros. As long as he could distinguish which man was a 1 and which was a 0, he could piece together that sequence. 100110. Converting from binary to decimal gives a 2-digit number, 38. Therefore, the answer to the final fill-in-the-blank question, the age of mechanical little princess Tua Tua, should be 38 years old. After all, she couldn't possibly be 100,110 years old. Chen Meng looked at the scratchpad calculations on the desk and nodded in satisfaction. Converting binary to decimal by hand wasn't something everyone knew, but he just happened to know how. The place values of binary are 1, 2, 4, 8. When calculating, you start from the rightmost digit multiplied by 1, the next digit multiplied by 2, and so on. If the digit is 0, the product is 0. Adding all the products together gives the decimal value. He had calculated 38. The process was a bit tedious, but solid enough. He glanced at the countdown timer on the podium. Less than a minute left. He double-checked everything to ensure there were no mistakes. He watched the sexy video one more time. Indeed, there were no other clues. When the timer hit 10 seconds, he took his pen and wrote the number 38 in the final blank. The next moment, a white light flashed on the test paper, and a red check mark appeared next to the fill-in-the-blank question. The countdown timer stopped at 6 seconds. The video on the screen slowly faded away. Celebratory fireworks appeared on both sides, and a control panel popped up in the center. Oh, brave pioneer, congratulations. Your keen observation and wisdom have helped you pass the first trial within the time limit. All crisis events in this zone will be eliminated immediately. You will receive a special reward, the Wise Man's Mind Pass. It includes 10 unmined level 4 iron mines, 10 unmined level 4 copper mines, 10 unmined level 4 titanium crystal mines, 10 unmined level 4 logging camps, and 10 unmined level 4 crimson heart rock mines. The manifestation of this encounter map varies across different regions, but the purpose remains the same: a seedling in the fire, hope in despair. In the apocalypse, you still had the presence of mind to notice these details. You are truly a conductor with extraordinary observation skills. Currently, 18 conductors have passed the first trial. Once 20 people are reached, this encounter map will close permanently. The 19 conductors from other regions will join you in entering the second trial to fight for the ultimate treasure. It is a gift enough to make countless conductors' hearts race, a grand prize bestowed by mechanical little princess Tua Tua upon the wisest person on this planet. Please keep this token safe. Before the second trial opens, the token will flash with a red light. Please be prepared within 48 hours. When the 48 hours end after the red light flashes, the second trial will officially begin. The control panel faded and then shattered. The fragments gathered in the air, compressing into a triangular token and a pass, which fell to the ground. A teleportation portal appeared next to it. The first trial was over. The second trial was temporarily closed. Chen Meng returned to Erdan's side, staring somewhat blankly at the pass in his hand. Previously, the most resource-dense area he had ever encountered was the mine guarded by the two-headed monster at the end of the train tunnel. That place had 3 level 4 iron mines, which was enough for him to strike it rich. But this time, there were 10 level 4 iron mines alone. Each mine had a reserve of about 10 million units. 10 mines meant 100 million. Enough. This time, it's really enough. Chen Meng muttered. That amount of resources was enough to upgrade both the train and the mecha suits. Plus, there were countless titanium crystals to build more combat drones. The wood and crimson heart rock were also so abundant they couldn't possibly use it all. It was just a pity he couldn't exchange all the wood and crimson heart rock for iron ore. If he had 20 more level 4 iron mines, that would be the dream life. Enough what? Dan asked curiously from the side, his eyes still fixed on the red zone where the fires of war had gradually died down. His voice was full of excitement. Boss Meng, the fighting in the red zone is over. How did you clear it? Those questions were so hard. How did you know the answers? Chen Meng turned his head, grabbed Dan, and planted a big kiss on his bald head, laughing loudly. Great job. There's absolutely nothing wrong with your traveling frog train. Keep it up from now on. I've always believed in you. Dan froze, quickly pulling away. He shivered and stammered, Boss Meng, didn't you see how I explore and counter maps? I constantly make fatal mistakes, don't I? Like the ice and snow world, and the sunset coast this time. So what if you make mistakes? Chen Meng didn't care at all, waving his hand dismissively. Make mistakes. Go ahead and mess up all you want. Since ancient times, who has ever lived without making a mistake? Even saints can't go their whole lives without erring. If a person is afraid to make mistakes, they'll definitely never achieve anything extraordinary. It's like walking on a single log bridge. On the left is the abyss, on the right is wealth, and at the end is stability. Only by falling do you get the chance to touch the wealth. Be bolder from now on. Take more risks. If anything happens, I, Chen Meng, will take the fall for you. Got it. Dan nodded vigorously, smiling brightly with gratitude. With Boss Meng saying that, I'm relieved. I've always loved doing this kind of stuff anyway. But how exactly did you pass it? Those questions were so hard. And how old is mechanical little princess Tuata? 38. 38. And they still call her a little princess? Very normal. The lifespan of the mechanical civilization is probably much longer than ours. Boss Meng, now I know there's a mechanical civilization in the universe, and I know our trains are all their products. But I still don't get if they're entirely robots or cyborgs. And how is that civilization passed down? Reproduction or AI awakening? I'm not sure either, but that's not important right now. As long as we stay alive, we'll find out eventually. And if we die? If we die, I'll burn some incense and let you know. Chen Meng patted Dan's shoulder, smiling half-jokingly. The clear rewards this time are very generous. I'm heading out first. I'm in a bit of a hurry. I already had someone bring down an extra 1 million units of iron ore and 2 million units of copper ore from the carriage for you. Don't be stingy with the copper ore from now on. If you see any plants or flowers that rub you the wrong way, just empty a magazine into them first. With you on the job, I'm at ease. Anyway, I'm off. Chen Meng didn't linger any longer and quickly headed back to the driver's cabin. He was genuinely anxious to see exactly what the wise man's mind looked like with his own eyes, and then immediately start mining this massive haul of resources. For the foreseeable future, his focus would only be on two things: the wise man's mine and Neon City. All the resources gathered would be poured entirely into upgrading the train. He had no intention of entering the red zone for the time being. Even though it was only a one-tier difference in zones, the gap in power between the trains felt massive. The trains in the red zone looked too strong. He wasn't sure he could handle them yet. Their defense wasn't high, but their firepower was absolutely terrifying. His armor was only level 15, not enough to withstand that kind of intensity. Until he upgraded his armor, he didn't want to take the risk. Develop. He had to keep developing. The train returned to its original route, arriving at the level 4 copper mine marked earlier, but another train was already mining it. Seeing that someone had beaten him to it, he didn't stick around. He just casually tossed a few free Neon City admission tickets out the window and left. About an hour later, he reached the intersection between the Valley of Peril and the Golem Zone, a place he was quite familiar with since he had stopped there for a few days before. Without hesitation, Chen Meng took a deep breath and crushed the wise man's mind pass in his hand. Immediately, a massive teleportation portal appeared in front of the train, looking almost identical to the Goblin Crypt portal. The train slowly accelerated, heading straight inside. Soon, the last carriage disappeared. The portal closed and vanished, as if it had never existed. A rapid beep 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 echoed in the driver's cabin. Chen Meng looked at the resource radar screen, the corners of his mouth curling up uncontrollably. This was the first time he had heard the resource radar beep so densely. The screen was densely packed with green dots. Level 4 iron mines, Level 4 copper mines, Level 4 titanium crystal mines. So many it made his head spin. Perfect. The train's mining efficiency had always been in surplus. A normal mine couldn't accommodate over 6,000 people at once, so mining usually had to be done in shifts. But here, it was different. The entire train's efficiency would be utilized to perfection. They weren't short on anything except minerals, and here, there were more minerals than they could ever use. The space wasn't large. His enemy detection radar could even cover the entire area. The train sat in the center, with the mines scattered across the yellowish-gray dirt ground. The environment here was almost identical to the Goblin Crypt, a completely enclosed space with no sun and no natural light source, relying entirely on the train's headlights. The only difference was that there were no corpses or train wreckage buried in the dirt. Let's get to work. The train's headlights turned on at full power, instantly banishing the darkness and flooding the space with light. Over 6,000 residents disembarked one after another, carrying pickaxes and shovels, eagerly rushing toward the mines. Once they finished mining this place, those with ambition wouldn't settle for Level 3 resident treatment anymore. They'd aim for at least Level 2, and even Level 1 wasn't out of the question. Of course, not everyone was driven. Some people enjoyed their Level 3 treatment, mining exactly 10 units of, or each time, and stopping once they hit the quota. They didn't care about upgrading or train tickets. As long as they had food, they were satisfied. The train wouldn't force them either. As long as they met the minimum mining quota, whether they wanted to upgrade was entirely their own choice. Chen Meng was quite satisfied with this rule, because happiness is often born from comparison. Having a group of people willing to just lie flat made the new Level 1 residents feel the superiority of their treatment even more acutely. The oxygen generators and stamina essential oils began operating at full capacity. The cola production line also quickly started up, churning out bottle after bottle. The once silent, desolate scene instantly became bustling and lively, brimming with vitality. Vitality is a very vague concept, something you can't grasp with your hands. But wherever vitality is abundant, people usually feel a very distinct sense of security, sometimes even an overwhelming one. For example, on the cliffs of Mount Hua in the dead of night, if you told someone to walk alone, probably very few would dare. But during the day, as long as there are people in front and behind you, the fear seems to diminish significantly. Even so, most of the people who chose that path actually did so because they couldn't turn back. Their only option was to move forward. Chen Meng stepped out of the train, stood by the hull, lowered his head to light a cigarette, and smiled as he looked into the distance. The rules for leaving this zone were different from the Goblin Crypt. In the Goblin Crypt, you were forced to leave after 48 hours. But here, leaving was entirely voluntary. As long as you wanted to, you could leave right now, but once you left, you could never come back. Unless he mined every last bit of ore in this zone, he absolutely wasn't leaving. Just then, Biao Zi ran over quickly, his face serious. "Boss Meng, you looking for me?" "Yeah." Chen Meng nodded, his voice dropping. "We'll probably be stationed here for about a month. During this time, the guard squad must do everything they can to improve their physical fitness. After a month, I want to see all of them wearing mecha suits. The train has plenty of Crimson Heart rock. Crafting a few hundred suits isn't an issue. I need to see results. I want a truly powerful guard squad. With so many map chips in the virtual combat training space, there's no reason their physical fitness shouldn't improve. For this month, you guys have no other duties. This area doesn't need guarding either. Your only mission is training. Understood?" "Understood," Biao Zi replied firmly, enunciating every word. "Don't worry, Boss Meng. If they aren't all wearing mecha suits after a month, I'll bring you my head." Chen Meng fell silent for a moment, then said casually, Are you planning to kill everyone who isn't qualified to wear the armor? No. The serious look on Biao Zi's face softened, and he scratched his head somewhat sheepishly. I was planning to personally lead them through all the normal missions, and then try the extreme missions. Extreme missions are very high risk. Be careful. How's the expansion of the squad coming along? Following your orders, each platoon has been expanded by 20 people. We've finished the first round of screening. The rest will undergo the second round in the virtual combat training space. It should be done today, and then they'll join the training for this month. Good. Chen Meng nodded, pausing for a moment before patting Biao Zi on the shoulder, his voice lowering even more. Biao Zi, even though you're the captain of Squad 1, I've always had very high expectations for you. In my eyes, you're a company-level commander. Out of all these people, you're the one I value the most. Don't just focus on your own squad. Keep an eye on Squad 2 and Squad 3 as well. The gap between the squads has gotten a bit too wide. Show me some results. The position of head of security for the train has always been kept open for you. Just waiting for the day it's officially handed over. Yes, sir. Biao Zi's eyes turned red, his voice hoarse but roaring with vigor. All right, go on. Chen Meng watched Biao Zi's retreating back, thinking to himself that this shot of encouragement seemed quite effective. His morale was instantly boosted. Biao Zi really did have potential. His talent wasn't outstanding, and he had barely survived clearing stages multiple times, but he always persevered. In terms of willpower, bloodlust, and endurance, he was top tier. He also had some management skills. While not as good as Lao Zhu, it was enough for a guard captain. He could be considered a semi-all-rounder, completely worthy of the role. Conductor. Xiao AI stepped off the train at this moment, asking tentatively, "You seem to be in a good mood." "It's all right. Are you not mad at me anymore?" "I was never mad at you." Chen Meng shook his head. "It's just a can of cola. I can still sleep tonight, and tomorrow too. There will be other chances. Besides, 1 unit of level 10 iron ore is equivalent to 1 billion units of normal iron ore. The probability of getting it in a dream was already extremely low. Getting it is luck, not getting it is fine too. It's just, Xiao AI, right now we still only have 2 cosmic receivers in Carriage 12. With so many materials, is it really that hard to build? I have very high expectations for you. Sometimes, expectations are also a form of pressure. I hope you can finish building all the cosmic receivers this month. Even though you're just the trained support AI, in my heart, you're a friend. Your family. Friend. Xiao AI froze slightly. Then her voice grew hoarse and her eyes reddened. Conductor, I'll get to work right away. I'm going. Just as Xiao AI left, Lao Zhu walked over, holding a report in his hand. Boss Mang, I have something to report. This is the train's development history I wrote up recently. Things at the school are progressing very smoothly. Many students want to meet you in person, Boss Mang. Professor Chiu has also submitted a request to meet, asking if you could come see them. No need. Chen Meng shook his head. It's not the right time yet. After they finish the theoretical part, we'll divide them into practical classes. Those meant for combat will fight. Those meant for management will manage. Lao Zhu. You're the one who's been with me the longest. On this train, the person I trust the most is you. You're my #1 confidant. The train now has over 6,000 people. The management system needs to be perfected. This month is a downtime. Use this time to completely overhaul our internal management. The most trusted person. Lao Zhu's eyes reddened slightly, his face solemn as he nodded firmly. Don't worry, Boss Mang. With me here, the train's internal affairs won't fall into chaos. Right at that moment, Uncle Li also walked over. All right, Lao Zhu, go get to work. Boss Mang. Uncle Li watched Lao Zhu walk away, then spoke up. Uncle Li. Chen Meng looked at him with a calm gaze. I've heard Lao Zhu talk about you. You were the first to follow the train. I've had my eye on you from the very beginning. Your talents haven't disappointed me. On this train, the person I have the highest expectations for is you. Keep handling the accounts for Neon City. As for the zombie incubator, I also hope you can finish researching it this month. Don't let down my expectations. Uncle Li was about to say something, but at this point, his eyes welled up with tears, his voice trembling as he choked out, Boss Mang, I didn't know you were always paying attention to me. Don't worry, within a month, I will definitely finish researching the zombie incubator. Wait for my good news, Boss Mang. With that, He walked briskly toward breeding carriage number 15. Chen Meng watched Uncle Li's retreating figure, hesitating slightly. It seemed he had just cut Uncle Li off. He didn't know what the man was going to say. Oh well, it probably wasn't important. If it was, Uncle Li would come back to find him. At this time, Zhang Damei also hurried over. Half an hour later, Chen Meng returned to the driver's cabin, his gaze sweeping over the images recorded by the mechanical eyes on the control screen, nodding in satisfaction. Everyone's work ethic was clearly much higher. Sure enough, people still needed more encouragement. Boss Meng. Xiao Fong walked into the cabin, carefully placing a fruit platter on the desk. I brought you some red chestnuts. Yeah. Chen Meng nodded, saying casually, just leave them there. Xiao Fong. I have very high expectations for you on this train. Don't let me down. Xiao Fong paused for a moment, her eyes turning red as she replied softly, I know, Boss Meng. Oh. It was only then that Chen Meng realized what he'd said. Watching Xiao Fong walk away, his lips parted, wanting to say something, but he ultimately stayed silent. He picked up a chestnut and popped it into his mouth, propping his feet up on the control console, getting ready to pick a movie to watch. He had spoken completely on reflex. He saw Xiao Fong and just blurted it out. But after saying it, he realized Xiao Fong was only in charge of making the bed and bringing meals. There was absolutely nothing she could do to let him down. Maybe learning to cook? Come to think of it, that wasn't a bad idea. At least she'd wash her hands more often. Thinking like that was pretty irresponsible, though. His work was basically done. The over 6,000 residents on the train were all busy. Not a single person was idle. Right now, the only idle person on the entire train was Chen Meng. But him being idle was exactly what put everyone at ease. If he were busy, then the train would likely be facing a massive crisis, and whether they could survive it would be hard to say. Uncle Li. The young man who always followed Uncle Li watched him inject himself with 2 shots of stimulants, saying hesitantly, Are you treating this stuff like wake-up juice? You haven't slept in days. Why don't you take a break? Break? Uncle Li's eyes were bloodshot. He tilted his head to look at the young man, his voice raspy. Until the zombie generator is fully researched, I'm never sleeping again in this lifetime. Hurry up and get me another crate of cola. You have no idea how high Boss Meng's expectations are for me. All my years of hard work, he's seen it all. A man will die for the one who truly values him. Boss Meng values me so much, I absolutely have to produce results. Otherwise, how could I face him? Go, ask Conductor Zhu for an off-road motorcycle, then find Boss AI to take the engine out. I have a crazy plan. The wise man's mine. 10 level 4 iron mines, 10 level 4 copper mines, 10 level 4 titanium crystal mines, 10 level 4 logging camps, 10 level 4 crimson heart rock mines. A total of 50 mining zones. Mining took time. It wasn't a simple job, but Chen Meng wasn't in a hurry either. Very quickly, 6 days passed. Chen Meng lay in his chair, looking at the movie on the screen that he had already watched 3 or 4 times. He sighed softly, lit a cigarette out of boredom, and looked out the window at the still bustling scene outside. No new movies, and no decent entertainment activities either. The mass-produced single-player game consoles. Chen Meng had tried them, but they only gave him one feeling: boring. He had also entered the virtual combat training space quite a few times over the past few days. This thing looked like a game, but it was actually just your consciousness entering it. There was no plot or sense of satisfaction. On the contrary, because of constantly getting injured and dying, the pain felt very real. It was fine for training, but as entertainment, it was seriously lacking. Lately, he had been dreaming a lot at night, but he hadn't managed to bring anything out of his dreams again. Probably because he had been constantly mining in his dreams for days, his body and mind were a bit sluggish, and his whole body ached with exhaustion. For the short term, he didn't want to create any more dreams. It was just too exhausting. He looked down at the project proposal in his hand. This was the plan drafted by Lao Zhu and Zhang Yiren yesterday. He had merely mentioned that there was too little entertainment on the train, and these two had immediately come up with a proposal: 2 reality shows. The first was a matchmaking dating show. The goal was to encourage the residents on the train to marry and have children, thereby maintaining and passing on human civilization. Chen Meng just skimmed it and casually tossed it aside. The train didn't need children right now. They had to wait until they were strong enough before considering passing on civilization. In reality, every child born on the train would grant a reward of +1 civilization inheritance value. But almost no train encouraged reproduction just for that meager reward. The reward was too low. It was a good thing it wasn't high. Otherwise, the lives of women capable of bearing children would be very difficult. When reproduction is overly incentivized, it turns into a form of transaction. The second program was a time travel reality show. By anesthetizing survivors, they would create the illusion of time travel, letting them live freely in a reconstructed space within the spatial door. Then, they would use hidden mechanical eyes to observe all their actions. Chen-meng nodded thoughtfully. Honestly, he was quite interested in the second show, and they wouldn't even need anesthesia. Just by activating the spatial silence, they could instantly create a perfect time travel effect. It was just that setting up the scene was a bit of a hassle. Personnel wasn't an issue. Last time they went scavenging in the city, a group of survivors had ambushed Biao Zi and the others. That group had been captured and brought back to the train. They weren't given resident status, but were detained to become guinea pigs. Normally, tests that required non-subjective exploration could use guinea pigs. Non-subjective meant the test subject didn't need to actively do anything. Just throwing them in was enough. For example, the puzzle-solving encounter map he had just experienced. Guinea pigs couldn't handle that kind of test. Xiao AI. I'm here. Contact Lao Zhu. I'm quite interested in the second reality show. Tell Zhang Yiren to go set up the scene. If we don't have enough resources, just use whatever materials are on hand. After that, Chen-meng turned to look at the screen on the control panel. It was almost the 7th day. There were only a few minutes left until midnight. When the time hit 0, Neon City would open again. This would be the second opening. He didn't know how many people had picked up Neon City admission tickets, nor did he know how many were planning to enter this time. The user data was practically 0. He couldn't see any statistics at all. It's all on you, Mingda. Chen-meng muttered in a half-awake, half-asleep state. The first batch of people to enter Neon City were mostly conductors from the regions he had passed through. They could be considered familiar faces. After all, the first batch of tickets had only been scattered in this area and hadn't spread to other regions yet. As for how many people would come for this second opening, it entirely depended on how many tickets Mengda had managed to hand out over the past few days. In other words, today was the day to test Mengda's results. Don't let me down, little Dada. Achoo. Out on the wasteland, Mengda was riding his off-road motorcycle at top speed under the starry sky when he suddenly couldn't help but sneeze. After rubbing his nose, he gunned the throttle and continued tearing forward. He could only randomly teleport 10 times a day. He couldn't just use a teleport every time he encountered a train. That efficiency was too low, and there was no guarantee he'd find a train every time anyway. His method was to ride his motorcycle and search the wasteland after each teleport, maximizing the use of his precious teleportation charges. He patted the bulging spatial pouch at his waist. It was stuffed full of red chestnuts, food, water, admission tickets, and all sorts of miscellaneous items. Mengda dug out a red chestnut and popped it into his mouth. Very quickly, he sensed a train stopped not far ahead and immediately sped toward it. The distance rapidly closed. The heavy machine gun on that train slowly rotated its barrel, aiming right at him, but it didn't fire. This was the confidence of a black market merchant. Anyone who dared to attack a black market merchant was practically asking for a death wish. He skillfully steered the motorcycle to the left side of the train car, pulled an admission ticket from his chest, and tossed it onto the ground.